This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 17th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, misty and 1 degree. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Over 1,000 Hydro Ottawa customers are without power in the southeastern of the city. Our crews are responding to the outage and investigating what is causing the loss of power, and power is expected to be restored by noon. With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
The risk of freezing rain and ice pellets this morning for Ottawa and Smiths Falls, so slow down on your drive. We will see a transition to mixing for the remainder of the day here in Ottawa, and then some scattered showers this evening as temps actually climb towards the dinner hour. For Smiths Falls, we will be mainly in the rain zone, highs near 6 degrees. The guaranteed high for Ottawa today, +2.
City News time is 10:01. It is St. Patrick's Day, and while many will enjoy some celebrations today, Ottawa bylaw and police are ready to ensure you don't celebrate too much. City News reporter Chris Curris has the story.
Police have gone door to door the past few days to remind residents in Sandy Hill to obey the rules, and there will be increased patrols today and this weekend by police and bylaw. They'll also be active in the Byward Market, Old Ottawa South, and generally near the post-secondary schools. Here's Allison Sandor with bylaw.
Obviously, St. Patrick's Day is a day where we want people to go out and enjoy themselves, have a little fun. But, in the past, we've seen large parties here in Sandy Hill.
She says it's about being respectful of your neighbors and a reminder that noise fines are almost $500. Chris Curry, City News.
And following the horror in Edmonton, police agencies and associations across the country are offering support to their colleagues. Here's City News reporter Martin McMahon.
This tragedy is a reminder of the risks police officers face every day, says Ralph Kaisers, president of the Vancouver Police Union. He has spoken with his counterparts in Edmonton to offer support.
I felt sick to my stomach right away. And knowing some of the details of the incident that these members attended to, that could be any police officer anywhere in this country responding to a call, not knowing what is potentially going to happen to them responding to a call for service.
We're also hearing from the National Police Federation, the RCMP union. It has sent us a statement saying our thoughts and hearts go to the families, friends, and colleagues of Constable Travis Jordan and Constable Brett Ryan, as well as to the Edmonton Police Service and the Edmonton Police Association. Martin McMahon, City News.
City News time 10:03. One of the many sport betting players in Ontario is getting out. City News business editor Chris McCusker explains.
In a statement on its website, CoolBet says it's exiting Ontario next month after operating for a year in the province. It's pulling out April 3rd, and it plans to turn off all deposit options as of next Tuesday. Now, the company says bettors have two options: use up the existing funds or top up the balance to withdraw all funds. And CoolBet strongly encourages people to take care of this as soon as possible. Now, this could be the first of many stories like this. Ontario's regulated market for legal sports betting and online casino gambling is very crowded, with more than 70 iGaming sites now active in the province, and that doesn't include options from the government-owned OLG. At the Business Center, I'm Chris McCusker.
I am Damilola Unime. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam Laprade Show on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here, my final day here this week. It's been a great week. My goodness. Sam will be back on Monday. We're all having a chuckle here at City News because as the news was being reported just a few moments ago that people have lost power in different parts of the city, many of you perhaps watching on TV, on Rogers TV here, would have noticed that we also lost power here. We're actually in the dark. Thankfully, we have a generator so we can continue to bring you this show both on Rogers TV and on City News. But yeah, our entire newsroom, of course, all our radio stations, such as Kiss and Shay, and everyone's in the dark. But we're still here to bring you the news. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Let's start off with that, first of all. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. You heard that it appears there's going to be... Oh, there I am. Hi, everybody, and watching on Rogers TV. I feel like I should be sharing a ghost story of some kind. For those of you listening on the radio, Rogers TV also carries the Sam Laprade show, the entire 3 hours from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I am literally just being lit by the two monitors in front of me right now. So, hello, everybody watching. No, it is not Ghost Stories with Derek today. We have lost power in the area. We do have our generator running, so that's why we're still up and running. Thank goodness for generators. As a matter of fact, it was just getting repaired yesterday, so that was good timing. That's for sure. Hope you're going to be able to, get out there and enjoy St. Patrick's Day. Don't forget, the new study, only 2 drinks a week. So I hope you saved your 2 drinks a week for today, my friends. You heard in our news as well that a larger police presence will be in and around the Sandy Hill area, and of course, probably in the Byward Market, because of the celebrations perhaps going a little too far in past St. Patrick's Days in those areas. It's interesting because yesterday on the Talkback Hour with David Smith, he was talking about illicit drug use and how more and more people are doing it right in the open, in broad daylight. On Wake Up with Rob Snow, the owner of the Grand Pizzeria and Bar, is calling for more police presence in the Byward Market amid growing concerns about crime and violence in the area. No reports on more police presence there, but for St. Patrick's Day, we're all in, people. We're all in. That was, by the way, David Mangano, the owner of the Grand Pizza. He was saying to Rob on Wake Up with Rob yesterday that he has seen more loitering and violence in the area, which is a concern, of course, not just for himself, but other businesses in the Byward Market. And he went on to say, growing more and more concerned because while we see a lot of this stuff increasing, we are not seeing a lot of enforcement or security being put in place to make us all feel a little more confident going forward. So that's a story. Mayor Mark Sutcliffe, right? He campaigned on the fact that he was going to hire more police officers and that he was going to put perhaps like a small police headquarters down in the Byward Market somewhere. Interestingly enough, when the owner of the Grand Pizzeria and Bar was on the Rob Snow Show, he was mentioning perhaps putting it in the McDonald's space, right? Because that McDonald's, the famous McDonald's on Rideau Street, my goodness, the stories that, we're getting power back. Here we go. All right, we're in the light now. The famous McDonald's there, of course, closing. So many stories. I'm sure we could probably do like a full 3-hour show in the Sam Laprade Show, just people calling in and sharing their stories about incidents that happened at that McDonald's. But yeah, he's suggesting perhaps putting some kind of kiosk there, like a police kiosk in there, in order to have a bigger presence down in the Byward Market. So, that's even in the Talkback Hour today, it's the Friday free-for-all, and people were talking about seeing more and more open drug use in their neighborhoods. St. Patrick's Day, of course, is a great day to celebrate. It also happens to be World Sleep Day. And I can attest that today I definitely need more sleep. For some reason, my friend Steve, who is turning 60 on Saturday, decided to have his birthday party last night during the week, so it was a bit of a rough wake up for me. I'm not gonna lie, bit of a rough wake up. We're gonna talk about sleep, by the way, on the show today because it is World Sleep Day. In particular, talk about the connection between stroke and sleep disturbances. We're gonna talk a little bit about common causes of inadequate sleep in both children and adults. There's a connection as well between mental health and sleep. Perhaps we'll touch on that. Matthew Jeffers, PhD student from the School of Epidemiology and Public Health at the University of Ottawa, going to be joining us on the show to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Chinese interference. I'm sure many of you are probably tired of hearing it, but it continues to be a big story after, of course, David Johnston has been appointed to look after this file. We'll talk a little bit about that. Find out, if anything's going to come of it. Many of you probably have heard that Silicon Valley Bank failed last week. That's a continuing story that we're going to talk about. And hours after the Swiss Central Bank said it was ready to provide financial support to Credit Suisse, the beleaguered mega bank took it up on the offer, hoping to reassure investors that it had the necessary cash to stay afloat. That offer being that it would borrow up to 50 billion Swiss francs, which works out to about 53.7 billion Canadian from the Swiss National Bank. Investors sent shares in the country's second biggest lender crashing by as much as 30% Wednesday. So a lot of people worried about the banking industry right now and what we should, do about it, right? People are starting to get nervous. Are they going to be putting their money, under their mattress soon because of that? Also, other stories that we're following here is the RCMP internal documents. After policing the Freedom Convoy, the RCMP says they have come away with lessons learned. That's what newly released documents show, including the need to better prepare for the potential targeting of emergency phone lines. This is a topic we're going to discuss with Michael Kempa, Associate Professor of Criminology at the University of Ottawa on today's show. We're going to have some fun because it's Friday, right? The weekend. We made it. We're here. Keith Whittier, movie reviewer, joining us on the show. Going to go through a few movies, perhaps even a television series, and get his thoughts on this year's Oscars. Lunch with Sam. We do that each and every day at the noon hour. Today, of course, Lunch with Derek. Got a few questions for our guests today that are going to pull up a chair for Lunch with Derek. Cam Holmstrom, principal at Nipaway Strategies, joining us, and Walter Robinson, former City of Ottawa executive and political commentator. I got a few things to talk about, being World Sleep Day, and ask them about, do they get enough sleep? What is your, maybe their bedtime routine? Find out what that is, because we know that routine's incredibly important. The federal budget is coming up in less than 2 weeks. Ask about, what we should expect on that. Another story out of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, they are planning to ban fighting starting next season. They need to finalize some of the details on that. By the way, the Ontario Hockey League and Western Hockey League have not announced any plans to strengthen rules against fighting. So I want to get their opinions on that too. What are your thoughts on fighting in hockey? Is there a place for it? And then at what level? This is an issue that people have been talking about, I would say, for the past decade. Does fighting still belong in hockey? Is it necessary? I think a lot of traditionalists believe it is necessary and would like to see it remain in the game. We'll get some thoughts on that. As I mentioned off the top, David Johnston will take up the post as Ottawa Special Rapporteur to investigate allegations of foreign interference in Canadian elections and society. We'll ask their opinions on that particular choice. And, like to throw in a fun question as well. This is an interesting stat. Vinyl record sales are immensely popular, and for the first time in more than 3 decades have surpassed the sale of CDs. I mean, what an incredible return to vinyl. I kept my vinyl collection from my teen years and sort of my 20s. I'm thankful that I did. My wife kept hers as well. So we have quite a really nice vinyl collection. So I'm going to ask both Cam Holmstrom and Walter Robinson if they have kept their vinyl collection, or if they collect at all. Have they kept their old collection? Do they even own a record player? Heck, I wonder, do the young guys say, do you guys own a record player? Yeah, thumbs up. What do we got?
I actually got, not only do I own a record player, I got my partner one for Christmas.
Really?
Yeah.
I actually got my daughter one for Christmas. Colby, do you own a record player?
The Bluetooth
Colby, the
ones now
intern?
and stuff too.
What's that?
No, of course I don't own a record.
You don't own a record player? It's coming, buddy.
Poor.
Oh, yeah, okay, so you're poor. Yes, okay, that makes more. You're an intern. Of course you're poor. What am I thinking? You can't, never mind the record player, you can't even afford an album. You know what an album goes for these days? Mind you, I just bought Best of the Doobie Brothers from Compact Music down on Bank Street. It ran me, I think, about $15. I think that's reasonable. I'm willing to pay $15, but some new albums, they're up like $45, $50.
I was gonna say, so I got my girlfriend the Billie Eilish one, and it's just an EP, like 6 songs, and it was $33.
$33. I mean, that's inflation for you, right? Oh, my goodness. My goodness. Speaking of the Doobie Brothers, by the way, tickets are on sale right now. They're coming. They haven't toured in 25 years. If I'm distracted at all during the show, it's because I'm trying to get Doobie Brother tickets. So I'll just apologize right now. They haven't toured in 25 years, and they're celebrating their 50th anniversary. They make a stop in Ottawa. I think it's on October the 16th at the Canadian Tire Centre. Not only did I buy the vinyl album, I actually bought the CD as well, because if you buy two, you get one free over there at Compact Music. And by the way, they're not paying me anything. I just happened to have gone there the other day. The Boyd brothers out there, they got a great business there, and it's they actually have. I think they've been in business for 30 years, and they were telling me that they have never had such brisk business in their 30 years than in the past 3. A lot of people turned to vinyl as kind of a hobby during the pandemic, and it's continued. Sales have continued. And there was actually quite a few young people in there when I was in there. So not just, old timers like myself buying vinyl, young people buying it as well. All right, got a great show for you. So happy to be back in the saddle here. You're listening on City News, watching on Rogers TV. This is the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage. We'll be back right after this.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Your City News forecast for today could be a windfall of cash. With our weather guarantee, if we're off by 3 degrees, you could win. Enter at ottawa.citynews.ca. And if you hear your name on Wake Up with Rob Snow at 7:21 a.m., call in to claim your cash.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Sometimes, for a wish to come true, it takes a kingdom, because together is stronger. Tied tight, united we stand, in honor of one child's wish, to fuel the fire that will grant many more. Join the kingdom.
Treaty in Cree is Naskumetoin, an oral agreement. And our agreements were always spoken. For George Spence, the core of treaty was Wichihioin, to help one another.
And so we, the commissioners...
He was there for the making of Treaty 9, where the Cree were told...
We will honor this agreement together, for as long as the sun shines and the waters flow.
The Cree made their mark because they were assured that the land would be shared, and they would always be able to harvest what they needed. George Spence was my great-grandfather. In his life, he saw many promises of the treaty go unfulfilled.
Treaties were essential to the creation of Canada. First Nations still fight for the agreements to be honored.
bum, bum. $20. $20. We're on the line for $20.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here filling in for Sam. Sam will be back on Monday after enjoying what looks like an absolutely beautiful vacation so far. She's been sharing it with some of her friends and family on social media. Boy, oh boy, Turks and Caicos. It just looks absolutely beautiful there. Well, I mentioned off the top that today is World Sleep Day. I will tell you that I normally get a good 9 hours of sleep, but it was my friend's 60th birthday last night. I'm still questioning why he had his party on a weeknight and not on a Friday or Saturday, because I didn't really get as much sleep as I should. However, we're going to have a serious conversation about sleep because it is very important, and I find that there's sort of a group that I follow on LinkedIn that kind of celebrate the fact that they don't sleep much because they're, entrepreneurs and, they don't need to sleep, work. And sleep is very important. Here to tell us more about it and the connection between stroke and sleep disturbances, I'm joined by Matthew Jeffers, PhD student at the School of Epidemiology and Public Health with the University of Ottawa. Good morning, Matthew.
Hi, Derek. Glad to hear that you got your power back in the studio.
Yeah, well, and I should warn, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, Matthew, because I should warn our listeners that we could drop off, but we will be back very quickly if we do drop out because we are running on the generator right now.
Well, I'll be prepared just in case I disappear.
Exactly. Matthew, before we get to that connection between stroke and sleep disturbances, how important is sleep? And, maybe just talk about, how many hours we should be getting and sort of how important that bedtime routine is.
Yeah, there's lots of different factors that can influence your sleep. And, if you have disrupted sleep, it can impact a lot of different elements of your life, like focusing, ability to, do your work and go about your day. A lot of different things like asthma, diabetes, I think you mentioned before, depression, anxiety, that kind of stuff. It can all, and, drinking, alcohol consumption, maybe like your birthday party that you've gone to. Those kind of things can all influence how much you sleep. And, in terms of how much, should you be getting sleep, I think that our current guidelines for that are around, like 7 or 8 hours a night is a good night's sleep.
Okay. Can you get too much sleep, Matthew?
Too much sleep? There has been research, including like the paper that I recently published showing that, more than 9 hours a day or less than 5 hours a night can lead to increased risk for things like stroke. Okay. So I think there is such a thing as too much sleep. Having really excessive durations of sleep has been linked to different cardiovascular, stroke, heart attack, different kind of outcomes like that.
So can you break down the study a little bit more? I mean, who was a part of this study? Were there different demographics involved?
Yeah, so we used a survey that's done by Statistics Canada called the Canadian Community Health Survey. Really big survey all across Canada. They survey about 130,000 people every single year. And we were able to get responses from 46,000 people who answered that survey about their sleep and about sleep problems that they have. And so we have, all kinds of different demographics, people all across Canada, and we're looking at different problems that they had if you had a stroke difficulty staying awake, difficulty going to sleep, not getting a refreshing sleep at night, sleeping too long, sleeping too short. So we were able to look at a lot of different features of sleep and how that related to if you had a stroke or if you didn't.
Matthew, do you think there could possibly be a lot of people out there that have problems with sleep, and they're unaware?
Yeah, certainly. Like I mentioned before, there's a lot of different chronic conditions that can lead to problems with sleep. You're not always aware of how well you sleep. I think, maybe if you have a partner or other people that are nearby, they can sometimes know better than you if you're, kicking in your sleep or snoring and that kind of thing. So this is an issue, I think, with sort of your own awareness of your own sleep health, is that you're asleep while you're doing it. So you don't really know how well you do it.
Are there treatments available out there depending on the type of problem you're having with sleep?
Yeah, our typical sort of route of care through, when people have sleep problems is to first start thinking about your sleep hygiene. Can you modify things about your behaviors for your routine around sleep, having a specific time you try to go to sleep, wake up in the morning, not having sort of anxiety or, really exciting things happening right before you're going to try to go to sleep, trying to change your behaviors in order to have a better environment for your sleep. That's something that I think anyone can do that can really help. And a lot of the time, if you had a sleep problem and you went to your doctor to talk to them about it, this is the kind of stuff that you might start off with. When you start talking about more severe sleep disorders, like sleep apnea, where you have a blockage of your breathing while you're sleeping, then there's other things like the CPAP machines that you might have seen before that help you keep a continuous airway while you're sleeping, or, different medications as well if you have things like insomnia.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a good point that you made earlier. Maybe asking your partner, right? And just to, hey, let me know if there's, you see any issues with sleep, because as you said, if you're sleeping, you may not even realize it. Matthew, really appreciate the time on this. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Derek.
All right, take care. Again, today is World Sleep Day. That was Matthew Jeffers, PhD student with the School of Epidemiology and Public Health at the University of Ottawa. We'll be back with more. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hello, my name is Sean Duhame. And this is the Sean Duhame Trio. I hope you enjoy it.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
It's closing time. And you stayed out longer than you planned. So now you can't drive. And the buses have stopped running. You could always call your girlfriend. Or maybe your roommate. What about your best friend? You could just dial 1-888-TAXI-GUY or use the Taxi Guy app. The call and the app are free, and they both connect you to a local cab company to bring you home safely. Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive, drive sober.
At Celebrate Ottawa, we love showing you something a little different. We showcase remarkable people highlighting the city's diversity in arts, culture, sports, and nature. We will show you features that prove Ottawa is a vibrant and exciting city. We'll entertain you and we'll even teach you new things. Join me, your host, Lila Grine, as we explore and celebrate Ottawa.
Here comes the 67. He scores! How's that for your first of the season? But another highlight reel goal. Perfect placement there on the one-time. What a play!
67's action on Rogers TV.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 17th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, light rain, 1 degree. In Smiths Falls, it is 3. And here's what's making news this hour. About 1,044 Hydro Ottawa customers are without power in the city's southeast end. It is affecting customers on Thurston Drive, Stevenage, and surrounding areas. Crews say they are currently assessing the extent of the damage in order to determine the options available to restore power. And Hydro Ottawa says power should be restored by 4 p.m. And Ottawa Police set to launch an educational campaign, Operation Interlude. It starts in next Monday. The launch is set to coincide with back to school following March break. Operation Interlude aims to coordinate enforcement measures by frontline patrol and traffic officers in areas surrounding school zones. Motorists who are caught stunt driving, folks who fail to stop for school buses, and people generally endangering road users will be ticketed and or towed. OPS is counting on everyone to do their part to keep kids safe on their commute to and from school daily. City News time is 10:32. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Sam, by the way, back on Monday. Derek Fage here, host of Daytime Ottawa on Rogers TV, filling in while Sam is off. But Sam will be making her return on Monday after spending some vacation with family. This topic, I know we've been talking about it quite a bit, but it's an important one. And that is the fact that we are looking into Chinese interference in our elections. David Johnston has been chosen as the special rapporteur. Just love that word, first of all. It's so fun to say. And you know what does that mean? I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at this, and we're going to look at it outside of politics in general. I'm joined by Stephanie Carvin, Associate Professor of International Relations at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning.
I mean, we've asked many people on the show about this, but I thought I'd start off by asking you: should we be concerned about Chinese interference in our elections? How do you feel about this?
Oh, yeah, this is definitely a serious national security issue. And I mean, I think one of the things that's important to kind of disaggregate, if we can, that's a big word for Friday morning on St. Patrick's Day, I'm sorry. We need to separate, let's say we need to separate, is, foreign states can try and meddle in our elections. That doesn't necessarily mean they succeed.
Right.
But the fact that they're trying is a problem. You can say, oh, well, it didn't work, we don't have to worry about it. No, we have to worry about it because, okay, it's not succeeding now, but are they learning every time they try? And are they getting more successful when they make attempts? And maybe one day they will be successful. And it's just something that, you're not supposed to do as a foreign country. So I really think this is a problem. I'm glad it's getting attention. But I'll go one step further and say it's not just our elections. It's foreign interference is much bigger than this, right? It's
in what manner, Stephanie?
In the sense that, communities have been speaking out about this for years.
Right.
The Chinese community in Canada, especially Uyghur activists, Tibetan activists, Hong Kong activists, Taiwanese, they have all been really, talking about this, saying, look, we're being harassed. Our families are being threatened. Students feel that they can't speak out on campuses because they feel they're being monitored. I mean, all of this is not okay. And so what I worry is that, this for a long time, I think we've ignored this. It's just been seen as an inconvenient thing, or maybe it hasn't even been seen as a Canadian problem.
Right.
But it is. right? These are people in Canada who are being harassed, who don't have the same kind of freedom of speech that, say, you or I have, because they feel like they're being monitored, they'll be threatened, etc. And so what I worry about is that, yes, the elections matter, but so do all this other activity that's been going on for far too long.
Yeah, and Stephanie, I mean, you alluded to it, the RCMP looking into those 2 Montreal area sites, right, which they believe to be operating on behalf of Beijing. The human rights groups have accused China of using the stations to threaten and monitor, Chinese nationals abroad. And just delving into this a little further, my understanding from my research that I've been doing is that these types of stations are believed to be among about 100 operating across the globe in approximately 53 countries. So it's not just happening here; it's happening in the UK and in the US. My understanding in Spain. So as you said, I mean, it is important. What is the goal of a government in doing this kind of thing, this kind of interference, and these threats to nationals around the world?
So there's a couple of things. The first is really that, I mean, to be fair, there are a number of criminals that have fled China and have laundered a lot of money, and China's not happy about that, especially when they end up here in Canada. Okay, fair. Doesn't mean you need to set up a police station. But the more concerning thing, I think, is that I think the thing that Beijing ultimately wants to do is always control the narrative, right? They always want to control the narrative. They want to amplify pro-Beijing sentiment, and they want to do everything they can to suppress alternative points of view. I think in some ways that you have, just stepping outside the police station issue for a minute, a lot of efforts to control the Chinese language press in Canada, right? Whether on WeChat, which is a Chinese language social media app, whether it is in Chinese language newspapers, Chinese language media, this is all really, really important. And I think that the police stations play a role in this, in the sense that, if you are speaking out or, maybe attending events that are pro-democracy or things like this, you may be asked to come in, and they may encourage you not to be participating in these kinds of things or these kinds of activities. So I think that this is really important to factor in. It's really just about controlling that narrative and making sure there's no opposition to President Xi.
Stephanie, do you think this is the right type of inquiry, having David Johnston look into it? And, I'll follow up with that is what will he be looking into exactly?
So there's basically, as far as I can tell, there seems to be at least 3 inquiries that are happening right now. The first is done by the National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. I mean, controversial. We can get into that if you want, but basically they're kind of looking at what the Prime Minister knew and when did he know it. And they have access to all the classified information. So they can kind of look at that kind of intelligence through that political lens and provide some background information that, we want to know, like, was the Prime Minister briefed on these things, and has the government not done anything as a result of it? And then there's a separate investigation done by a lesser known group, but it's the National Security Intelligence Review Agency. They're going to be looking at how the intelligence community itself responded to these kinds of activities. And then thirdly, there's this special rapporteur, and a special rapporteur, I guess, it basically means like the guy who's going to look into it and report back, right? I had to kind of, my parents were, I asked them what they thought of David Johnston, and they said, what's a special rapporteur? I'm not sure he gets what that is. But basically, he's been asked to look at this issue and be like, should we have a bigger inquiry into this? And looking at the press release that I saw, it says that he's going to have a wide mandate to look at the federal election in 2019 and 2021. And my concern with that is, like what I just said, I mean, this problem goes so much deeper than just the federal election. And I worry if we only focus on the election, we're going to be ignoring things that have been happening in the community for some time. And I worry that we're basically going to see Challenges with regards to, I think the election issue, the federal election issue is just one slice of the pie. And I mean, there's been reporting the last 2 days about interference or potential interference, I should say, in the Vancouver municipal election. This isn't even just happening at the federal level. It's also happening at the provincial level. It's happening at the municipal level. It's happening at the school board level, right? And I think that this is something, we need. I'm in favor of a very broad inquiry. Now, I don't know if the government wants to fund that. These things are very expensive. Right. But for so long, we have ignored this problem. I think kind of just using this as an opportunity to get a good understanding of the problem and take action is something that I hope the rapporteur will recommend. But I mean, I think it's going to really depend on how he interprets his mandate.
And I guess it depends too on my understanding, and Stephanie, you can clarify this. My understanding that he will report directly back to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister will then decide how much information we get to hear from this. Is that right?
Well, so he's going to make a recommendation. The government has said that they will adhere to the recommendation that is made by David Johnston. So I think it really depends. He's going to say, yes, have an inquiry, no, have an inquiry. Now, everyone always talks about the Oliphant Commission, which, I'd kind of forgotten about in the back of my brain, which looked into Brian Mulroney and I think some of the Airbus scandal back in the 90s and 2000s. And he recommended against having an inquiry. And so I think people are concerned that this is going to be a similar situation. So that's basically what it's going to be. I think one of the challenges is that with regards to the elections, information about the election is probably pretty close hold intelligence. I mean, at least the stuff that's not being leaked to the Globe and Mail. And so there's only, I think there's going to be serious limits on an election, one that just strictly looks at the election. I think if you had an inquiry that involved the Chinese Canadian community, and even, we talk so much about China, we also need to talk about India, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, right? These are all countries that are involved in these kinds of activities. So the issue is this could potentially be huge. It could be a huge inquiry, but I think that, the problem is because it's, in the end, if it's going to be public, the role of intelligence in it is going to be pretty limited.
Well, and I imagine that many Chinese nationals, that have now made Canada their home, they must be concerned as well, because when things like this come up, you start getting nervous. First of all, if you've been harassed already, right, and now that this is sort of into an investigation by the RCMP, you'd be concerned about that. And then you'd also be concerned because, when instances like this come up, Stephanie, we often see, people turn on, different people from the community, and things can start getting pretty ugly, and things can start getting very concerning for these communities, right?
Right, exactly, right.
We have to be careful about that.
Exactly, and no one's going to benefit more from that than China.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Right, exactly. And this is why we have to be done with care, but this is also why I want a broader inquiry. I want the community itself to be able to speak about this stuff. Right. It's one thing for me, national security nerd, to go and say my piece. It's another for someone who's actually been victimized by this to tell their story and explain why it matters. And, there's a number of great groups out there, Alliance Canada Hong Kong. They actually, in 2021, issued a really, really excellent report on all the foreign interference that they were seeing. And I think we have to prioritize being sensitive to Chinese Canadians here. I mean, just throughout the whole pandemic, they were being victimized by, people blaming them for the coronavirus and things like that, right? I mean, we've come out of a period where we've seen unprecedented levels of anti-Asian hate in Canada. And I do worry that all this focus on the community is going to blow back on them. So I think the way to counter that is this kind of broader inquiry where the community itself can speak to its experiences and not just focus on the election, which is, obviously China bad is going to be a huge part of that narrative. But I really, really, really think we have to be careful in terms of how we go forward.
Yeah, agree. Well, really well said, Stephanie. I couldn't agree more. And I think, just bringing that fact up let's hope that decision is made where we get that broader inquiry. Just for that alone, I think it would be worth it. Stephanie, really appreciate the time today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, that was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's Stephanie Carvin, Associate Professor of International Relations at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
On the next Fit Over 50, come and join me for an upper body and core strength workout using weights and resistance bands. We'll see you then.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
Blood in the urine is the most common symptom of bladder cancer. Don't ignore this warning sign, not even once.
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll learn more about the important role of a certified child specialist and how they help support pediatric care. And also, Friday is World Sleep Day. There's so many of us out there that don't get enough sleep, don't get a good night's rest. So we'll give you some advice on, how to prepare for a good night's rest. I can pretty much sleep standing up, so I think I'll be okay, but I encourage you to tune in. All that and more on Friday's Daytime Ottawa.
Hey everybody, my name is Karen. I'm here with my best friends Shane and Monique. Join us on Rogers TV for Fitness Faction. Every week we're going to take you through a full body workout. We've got strength training, we've got cardio, we've got HIIT. Ladies, let's get back into it.
I think we've got 10 more skaters. Let's go.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Salut tout le monde, je m'appelle Jessie Lindsay. Venez écouter mon spectacle Encore Ottawa 3 sur Rogers TV cette semaine. Hi everybody, come listen to my Encore Ottawa 3 show on Rogers TV this week. I hope you enjoy it.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Sam. Sam will be back on Monday. Another warning here to listeners and viewers, especially on Rogers TV. We've been losing power on and off here in the building, and I guess probably in the entire area. So if you all of a sudden, if you're watching on TV and you see me go dark, we have our generators running, so you'll most likely still be able to listen. But I just wanted to warn people. And if you are listening on radio, in your car or something, and you do lose us, we'll be back very quickly. So it would just be a very brief moment if we lose. But yeah, there's power out in the area, so just keep that in mind. This is a story we've covered, of course, here on City News, the fact that Silicon Valley Bank failed last week. And the question is, was that a unique situation, or is it something that should make us, question our financial institutions? And I'll follow that up with the fact that Credit Suisse is now set to borrow up to, I believe it's over $50 billion from the Swiss National Bank, because investors sent shares in the country's second biggest lender crashing by as much as 30% Wednesday. Here to talk more about that, to take a deeper dive into it, I am joined by William O'Connell, PhD candidate at the Department of Political Science at the University of Toronto. Good morning, William.
Good morning, Derek. Thank you for having me.
First of all, let's just not assume that everybody understands what happened. Maybe you could just walk us through what happened with the Silicon Valley Bank failure.
Of course, yeah. So Silicon Valley was a bank much like any other. They took customer deposits, had checking accounts, savings accounts, took deposits from corporations, they made loans. But the difference with Silicon Valley is that they were primarily concentrated in the tech sector in Southern California and the Bay Area. And as a result, a very large portion of their client base were kind of small, medium-sized tech companies, startups, venture capitalists, and kind of a specific clientele that maybe has a higher risk appetite than others and has kind of a different depositor profile. Silicon Valley Bank then used those customer deposits that they were getting to invest in relatively long-term U.S. government bonds and mortgage bonds around 2015, 2016, 2017, when there was a large boom in the California tech industry.
Okay.
Now, as we know, interest rates were a lot lower 5, 6, 7 years ago than they are now. And the result is that those investments that they made went considerably down in value because, of course, if you're buying bonds today, you can get a much higher interest rate than you would in 2017 or 2018.
Of course. Yeah.
So as the tech sector in California kind of started to wind down and companies started to kind of wind down the amount of debt that they had, pull a bit of their money out, Silicon Valley had to start selling these investments at a considerable loss in order to meet withdrawal demands. And that had a cascading effect where they faced more withdrawals, had to sell more assets, realize more losses, and eventually the system collapsed onto itself.
Yeah, and I mean, it is unique circumstances for sure. Just, how you described it, those are, at the same time, when I look at it, it was the 16th largest bank in the United States, right? And from my understanding, there's over 4,500 banks in the United States. So when you're losing the 16th largest bank, I imagine there's a lot of anxiety involved in that, William, for people that have their money in any bank. So what differentiates that from, let's say, the U.S. banking system from the Canadian banking system? Are we in a better place here in Canada?
Sure, of course, yeah. So there are quite a bit of differences between the U.S. and the Canadian banking system. So Silicon Valley is the 16th largest bank in the U.S. The 16th largest bank in Canada is quite small. Our banking system is much, much more concentrated.
Right.
And that means that bank failures in Canada happen less often simply because there are fewer banks. But if one were to happen, it probably would have a much larger cascading effect just due to the concentration. So it is concerning, of course. I mean, this is a very large deal, but the fact that this was a bank in Silicon Valley that was concentrated in one geographical sector and was primarily involved in one sector of the economy allowed it to fail in a manner that still had disruptive effects on the larger economy, but maybe not as extreme as happened with some of the bank failures in, say, 2008, where you had larger banks that kind of operated over a much wider section of the economy.
Another question people are asking, William, is why is the U.S. government helping them? And I guess the follow-up to that is should they be helping them?
Of course, yeah. So it's important to distinguish what exactly constitutes a bailout. So in this instance, this was not a situation of the U.S. government essentially nationalizing all of their debt and kind of guaranteeing bondholders, guaranteeing shareholders, or using taxpayer money to bail out the people responsible for this mess. Instead, what they're doing is guaranteeing deposits over the federal deposit insurance cap, which in the U.S. is $250,000 and in Canada is $100,000. And what this means is if you're a depositor of Silicon Valley Bank, you're eligible to receive your money above that $250,000 cap if you're a depositor. So if you're a shareholder of Silicon Valley Bank, you're losing your money. If you're a bondholder of Silicon Valley Bank, you're losing a substantial portion of your money. But the depositors here, these are, medium-sized corporations that might have had payroll obligations that are more than $250,000. And so by guaranteeing those deposits, the government is able to ensure that the shareholders and the management of Silicon Valley Bank face the losses that they deserve for taking on this risk. But the depositors who had nothing to do with this don't lose money that would result in layoffs, job losses, furloughs, or serious negative effects on people who didn't have anything to do with this failure.
Right. So what should we be watching for in the coming weeks and the coming months, do you think?
So I think in the short term, really what we should be looking at is this Credit Suisse issue, which really is in some ways unrelated to the SVB failure in the sense that they didn't exactly have much exposure to SVB, but I think the general panic among investors and wariness has really taken its toll there. Credit Suisse has been kind of teetering for quite a while. They've had some issues raising funding, and it appears at least as if this emergency loan from the Swiss National Bank has calmed things in the short term, but how that will shake out in the long term remains to be seen. On a longer time frame, I think we might see some additional concentration in the U.S. banking system as individuals start to look at some of these smaller regional banks and question whether they really want to put themselves through the stress of this situation. Because if Silicon Valley were a much larger bank, then there really would be no doubt that a bailout or something of that nature would come, and they wouldn't face the same degree of uncertainty.
What happened with the Credit Suisse situation? You touched on that briefly.
Yeah, so Credit Suisse has been facing some difficulty as a result of regulatory reforms that were implemented after 2008 that kind of mandated some restructuring for some of these large global investment banks. And the result is that they have been gradually trying to unwind some positions and simplify some of their business models to kind of fit in the new post-2008 regulatory landscape. In the last 6 to 8 months or so, they have been struggling to get funding. They've tried to issue new shares and had some difficulty selling them. Their stock price has been kind of gradually declining for a few months now. And the result is that they are simply having trouble finding lenders to finance their day-to-day operations. I believe 2 days ago, they made an agreement with the Swiss National Bank, the central bank in Switzerland, for this $54 billion loan.
Right.
And that appears to have swayed markets that things are calm for now, because this appeared to be much more money than what they had been asking from private markets.
William, really appreciate your insight into this. Thanks so much for taking some time with us here today.
Great. Thank you for having me.
All right. That is William O'Connell, PhD candidate at the Department of Political Science with the University of Toronto. Lots more coming up here on the Sam Laprade Show. This is Derek Fage filling in. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
After a night out with your friends, there's always options for getting home safely. You could call your BFF, your mom or dad, whoever you can count on for a safe ride home. You could call your favorite cab company or 1-888 taxi guy. Or you could use the Arrive Alive smartphone app to help you choose your ride. Be it a friend, transit, or taxi, getting home safely is app easy. Now available for iOS and Android devices. Visit arrivealive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Hi, I'm Meg from AIM Fitness, and I'm here with my buddy Fit Finley. Join us every week for Fit Over 50. We'll take you through some low-impact and high-intensity workouts designed to improve your strength and your balance. All you'll need is a resistance band, some light hand weights, and also your water bottle and a sturdy chair. Tune in right here on Rogers TV and let us be part of your weekly routine.
On the next episode of Simply Cooking by Chef, I make my gluten-free focaccia and my Nona's tomato salad.
Your City News forecast for today could be a windfall of cash. With our weather guarantee, if we're off by 3 degrees, you could win. Enter at ottawa.citynews.ca. And if you hear your name on Wake Up with Rob Snow at 7:21 a.m., call in to claim your cash. City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 17th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, light rain, 1 degree. In Smiths Falls, it is 3. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. And happening now, over 1,000 Hydro Ottawa customers are without power in the Gloucester Southgate part of the city. The cause, a traffic accident in the area. Hydro crews are currently making all the necessary repairs in order to restore power to the affected customers. And Hydro Ottawa says power is expected to be restored by 4 p.m. And here's your weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley with City News weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
It's an unsettled day with a bit of freezing precipitation still showing up on the radar through Ottawa and Smiths Falls, mixing with rain and also some snow and some flurries. So we are in for an active weather day. Quite a bit of mixing expected for Ottawa. It's mainly a rain story for Smiths Falls. Overnight and through Saturday, it's quite windy as well as we move through the day, and there's still a chance of some lingering active weather, likely some mixing through the region. Today's guaranteed high +3.
City News time is 11:01. Today is Brenda Lucky's last day on the job as RCMP Commissioner. And while there is no word on her permanent replacement, the government has named Michael Duhim as interim commissioner. His most recent posting was as Deputy Commissioner of Federal Policing. Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino says he has every confidence that Duhim's extensive experience in policing across the country and around the world has prepared him well to lead our national police force. And it's a day known for some Green Bear and extra celebrations, but Ottawa Police and bylaw are going to make sure that St. Patrick's Day doesn't get out of hand. City News reporter Chris Curries has the story.
It has in the past, and days like the Panda Game have shown areas like Sandy Hill at their worst. So there will be an increased presence of officers today and this weekend.
You'll also see us around Carleton University, around Old Ottawa South area, Sunnyside, so we'll have extra officers in that area. Generally, in the past, the largest of the parties have been in the Sandy Hill neighborhood.
Allison Sandor with bylaw says they want people to have some fun, but just not too much. And Ottawa Police add they've gone door to door in the past few days and have spoken at the universities about this weekend. Chris Curries, City News.
And turns out a well-known sweetener you've likely consumed may be worse for you than the sugar it is trying to replace. Now, that's according to a new study, and City News reporter Sonia Aslam is finding out if you should throw out everything that has it on the ingredient list.
First off, the key to most things is moderation, and in this case, we're talking about erythritol. It's a sugar alcohol that's used to bulk up or sweeten items like stevia, monk fruit, and keto products you may find in the pharmacy section. The study shows it's been linked to blood clots, stroke, heart attacks, and even death. Ali Chernoff is a registered dietitian in Vancouver. She says, like with any study, more research is needed, but she thinks this is enough evidence that you should be concerned.
This is a newer sugar alcohol, and even the other sugar alcohols that have been on the market for many decades, there's always been concern, especially changing the gut health. So when we change the gut health, obviously that affects everything, as we know now. So the fact that this particular sugar alcohol is affecting cardiovascular risk is not really a big shocker.
She adds you don't have to throw everything out if you have items with this stuff, but keep a very close eye on how much you're ingesting. Diabetes Canada says erythritol has been approved for sale and consumption in this country, adding Health Canada has set acceptable daily intake values based on body weight. Sonia Aslam, City News.
I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here filling in for Sam. Sam will be back on Monday. This is a very intriguing study. I actually sent this to our production team at the beginning of the week because it really stood out to me in the way that, we have covered the effects of COVID-19 and the pandemic on people's mental health. And this study that we're going to talk about is being billed as the world's most comprehensive study on COVID-19 mental health. I am joined by one of the members who is responsible for looking into the other 137 other studies with the data, and that's Brett Tomes. He's a professor at the Faculty of Medicine at McGill University. Good morning, Brett.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So, Brett, first of all, let's talk about the data that you looked at and why that's important to take that into consideration here.
Sure. I'd like to say what we actually researched. There's a lot of confusion about that.
Yes.
Because I think in COVID, many people suffered. Most or almost everybody. There's suffering and loneliness. People lost people. So we did not do. We were not. Mental health is not the study of the normal emotions that we have when we go through hard times.
Right.
And that's part of living. And so I don't want to have confusion about that. People were frustrated. They were sad. They were heartbroken and lonely. What we studied was mental health. So mental health is then, can you cope with those things? So if you're going through those things and you're commiserating with your friends, you're getting out and walking, you're eating regularly, it's not a mental health issue. That's humanity. That's how we work our way through. We live joys and pleasures. So we studied mental health, which is, can you not cope anymore? And what we did, we went back and to analyze change, you have to see if things are different than they were before. So we reviewed 95,000 articles and looked for studies that actually were tracking people before the pandemic and their mental health, primarily anxiety, depression, or a mix of the two, and then continued to track the same people in the pandemic. Okay. And we evaluated then in the general population and all sorts of other subgroups by ages and anything else you can think of. We looked for data. We included anything we could find in all this research out there. How much did things change? And essentially found that, that people were pretty resilient. People had awful experiences, but in terms of their mental health, depending on the analyses we did, didn't change much or change a little bit, minimally or a small amount. But the good news was, there was no tsunami of mental health repercussions, despite what people went through, like had been trumpeted out there by a lot of experts.
Well, that's my concern, Brett, and I'll throw media under the bus as well. I'm part of the media, and no, but I do think, Brett, that we share a big part of the responsibility because I think, the pandemic, of course, very serious and many lives lost and so forth. But I find that sometimes in media, we tend to sensationalize things and, grab for those headlines and use words like mental health when perhaps we shouldn't be, Brett.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think there's a lot of people responsible. To be fair, you depend on experts, and our experts are out there saying unequivocally, suicides are rising, mental health is falling through the floor. And the fact is they were making those statements without any evidence. And in fact, suicides, the hardest outcome we have in mental health, have either been stable or dropped. So they were dead wrong, and they were making these statements. They weren't saying they didn't know. They weren't saying, given that we don't know, here's what you should do. Lots of our experts were informing the media saying this is what's going on. And so, and you're right though. Either whether it's science, if I'm going to get on as an expert, it's because I'm going to give you a strong, clear message. You don't get on as an expert if you're going to tell everyone how much uncertainty there is. And same thing with media. As much as we want to read good stories, they can be kind of boring. So,
you make excellent points, and you're right. I mean, yeah, sure. I was, but you're right. I mean, we do have to, because we're not experts by any means when it comes to mental health and trying to figure out the difference between it being a mental health issue and, as you described it, being sad and having the resiliency to be able to deal with that. The other thing that I found in this study that you found out that one of the great things about the pandemic is the fact that many people found new hobbies and their work-life balance got better.
Well, I think that we didn't specifically address that. We looked at levels of symptoms, but I know in my other work, I work with, for instance, with a rare disease called scleroderma. It means hard skin in Greek. It's a terrible disease. It's mostly women, typically 50 plus, up to 70s, and there are many examples. These people got together. They learned how to use technology they'd never used before. And they support each other. They linked with other people with the disease. They made new friends. And they're still online on video conferences with these people 3 years later. People on my street started going out and doing, in cold weather, social distance exercise. They'd never exercised together before.
Yeah.
And they're still out there today. So, it's a two-sided coin. It's mixed and it's messy. Some people's mental health did get worse. Some got better. They made, like you said, they reprioritized, they reduced commutes. But overall, our study doesn't speak to any one person's experience. So we want to be sure that we're not saying that nobody did. It was messy. People went up, people went down. Overall, though, we didn't have this collapse. And we lost, though, I think, a word to the experts here, we lost the other side of the coin when people in communities support each other and did the things that we sometimes don't think we can do in this fragmented age these days. But they did what they had to do to keep on keeping on and help others to do the same.
Yeah, and I'm saying it so well because you were saying you started seeing neighbors outside and exercise. I have never seen so many of my neighbors I had never seen before, Brett. And then a pandemic hits and it basically tells everyone to self-isolate. And then everyone all of a sudden had this greater appreciation of being outdoors and nature. And I live by the Rideau River and people were kayaking and stand-up paddle boarding and canoeing. And, people were buying basketball nets. So bringing out their board games and playing cards and on and on. So again, as you said, many people had difficult times, but I think many people found some new and exciting things to do in their lives. Next question is, what about, because whenever we study mental health, we sort of split it up with different demographics and, of course, different genders. Between men and women, did you find any difference?
We sure did.
Okay.
So when we said, they're messy data. There are only a few really strong studies around the world. But we did find the one consistent pattern we found is that, women across anxiety and depression in the mixed bag did have worse symptoms on average by a small amount. Now, when I say a small amount, that's probably something that any particular person, some people are more sensitive, might notice it. Some people who are less sensitive might not even notice it. But when you find that on average, that tells you that, more women are doing worse than not. Or there's an increase in women who are doing worse with mental health. And that, there are a lot of reasons that, could have happened. There was a lot of burden on women in the pandemic. They're more likely to have single-family homes and dealing with child care while trying to go out and work at the same time in health care or elder care. There was greater intimate partner violence. There were a lot of challenges that rose in the pandemic. That was one of them, and that's not just targeted at women, but largely so. So that was one area, and it reminds us that, we do need services, and there was a crisis in mental health before the pandemic. So my saying there's not a crisis here, my saying it hasn't increased dramatically during the pandemic doesn't erase the fact that we were doing a very bad job getting people services beforehand, and we need to pay attention to this and make sure that people have both the social supports to prevent worsening mental health and also to address it when it comes.
And you're, I imagine you're in Montreal, Brett, am I right?
correct.
Not near McGill. Because we've had a lot of talk over the last few days here at City News with, talking about lack of affordable housing, and we're seeing a growth in the homeless population and a growth in, public and open use of illicit drugs. I imagine it's the same in Montreal, Brett, that we're seeing here in Ottawa and Toronto, Vancouver.
My impression is anecdotally, yes. I don't have any data, but that certainly seems to be the case.
Yeah, it just breaks your heart to see things like this. This study is so fascinating, Brett. I really appreciate you spending some time with us today and taking a bit of a deeper dive into this than just me talking about it a little bit earlier on in the week. So I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you were interested, and thanks for inviting me to come on and comment.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much, Brett. That's Brett Toombs, professor at the Faculty of Medicine at McGill University. There's an excellent article, by the way, online that you can find as well. So if you just look up probably McGill University mental health study, you'll find that article on it. A number of different news outlets have covered this particular study as well. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. We're on the line for $20.
Yo. Yep. Okay, I'll be there.
We were born in Canada. We spoke English. On the streets, we weren't welcome. But on the field, we were the Asahi. Vancouver's champions. Everyone cheered for us. Our people had a voice. Then Canada declared war on Japan. They took us from our homes, called us enemies, forced us into camps. But we brought the game with us. Baseball helped get us through the internment.
The Vancouver Asahi were among the 22,000 Japanese Canadians interned during the Second World War. The team never played another game.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Hello, my name is Sean Duhame. And this is the Sean Duhame Trio. I hope you enjoyed.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. I think this is an excellent segue, talking about mental health in the last interview to this particular topic. And I'll just go over this before I introduce our guests. After a second deadly vehicle rampage in 2 months, Quebec's public safety minister has said that it may be time to review whether people with certain mental health conditions should be prevented from getting behind the wheel. He went on to say, speaking in the wake of an incident Monday that killed 2 people and injured 9 others, he said the government has an obligation to review the facts of the case, which is incredibly important, of course, to determine whether measures can be taken to improve public safety in the province. But we have to take a cautious approach to this, and my next guest is going to tell us why. I'm joined by the Chief Executive for the Schizophrenia Society of Canada, Chris Somerville. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning to you.
Pleasure having you, Chris, because as I said, we do have to take a very cautious approach when, we look into something like this. When you heard the Quebec's public safety minister's words on this, what was your initial reaction?
Well, when I first I actually read it, and then I watched the video, but first reading the paper, I just thought of the word archaic. Is it just so archaic, so generalized, and to designate people with a specific diagnostic label, whether it be schizophrenia or something else, as being prohibited from driving a vehicle by being denied a license forever it's not reasonable, it's not logical, it's not based on science. But he did seem to draw back a little bit in his remarks. That this did need a lot of careful thinking, and that's what I would say. Yes, careful, cautious thinking. 97% of the people with schizophrenia never come in conflict with the law or hurt anyone.
Right.
And just because someone might do that, that does not mean they're not criminally responsible. In other words, people with mental illness can get angry and upset and mad or want to do something evil or harmful, like I think all of us can do. So, but once a diagnostic label comes out, this person has a mental illness or so forth, then we jump to these types of so-called remedies, which would penalize, 97% of people with a mental illness.
Yeah, and Chris, I hear time and again from people that have an argument, well, you can no longer force people to take their medication, and how do we, keep track of whether they continue the medication? Yeah. And some people feel, once they've taken it and they feel better, they just drop it off, and that, they just stop taking it. What about, that argument that I'm sure you've heard many times, Chris?
Well, I've worked in this field 30 years and have a brother with cannabis-induced schizophrenia, and there was involvement with the law in Alabama, where I grew up. I've been in the Canada since 1985. For your listeners, in case they're wondering why Southerners commenting on a Canadian news item. Most people will take the medication, and some people will see if they can come off of it, and they work with their doctor on it. And some people are rather successful, because up to 60% of people with, let's say, in this illness of schizophrenia do recover. That is, they learn to manage the illness, they learn the role of medication, they have other personal medicinal things that help them, like mindfulness, if there's psychological trauma. So, to do a psychological autopsy on this person, so to speak, is to find out what was his state of being, his state of mind, what was going through his mind.
Right.
Was it based on some sort of paranoia, or was he just angry for today because he's angry at so many? I mean, there's a lot of anger in the world today, a lot of anger and fear and hopelessness. But there are ways in all the provinces that I know of wherein if a medical doctor treating a person with a mental illness or a heart condition, even if they know that their medication is going to make them drowsy, or if in the case of mental illness they have behavior which might make them at risk for driving, that driver's license can be pulled permanently or indefinitely.
Right. And I'm
I'd say let's just leave it to the medical people. I mean, the question has come up, probably about 10 or 12 times over 30 years. People worrying about losing their driver's license, or a family member calling, and they were people who were doing well, but something was in the news or what have you.
Yeah, and I think people paint sometimes, things like this, like something like schizophrenia with a broad brush, Chris. Mm-hmm. And from my understanding, Chris, it's very individual for each person. Some are more severe cases than others, right?
It's one of the most heterogeneous illnesses. In other words, if you've met one person with schizophrenia, you've met just one person. There's positive symptoms, negative symptoms, cognitive symptoms, depression symptoms. So that makes up for a total cluster of around 20. And so everybody's cluster of symptoms is different. Then the doctor has to attempt to find a medication that will address those symptoms without there being side effects. And sometimes there's, one or two, and in rare cases, two or more medications. And, people have to learn stress management because stress is much harder and more profound for those of us who, have mental health problems. And so, stress, a lot of people say, well, just make sure they take their medication and stay out of our way. Well, recovery and doing well is a whole lot more than medication.
Right.
There's just the whole stress of living a life in which that most people think that, and I'll use a word that I don't like to use on the air, but it's crazy. I could use some other words, obviously. Mm-hmm. So we work with people in terms of their own self-esteem to deal with self-stigma. Self-stigma is when you internalize the stigma that's in society and you say, oh, yeah, I must be broken. There must be something wrong with me. A lot of Africans internalized stigma during colonization, that they were less, they were inferior, they were less than the white people, et cetera.
Right. Any concern, Chris, that there's most likely undiagnosed cases out there and people haven't
in terms of undiagnosis, I mean, the way we are, I mean, we're most people probably live with some undiagnosed problem just generally.
Right.
Generally,
right.
Not going to the not going to the doctor like I did yesterday for esophageal reflux. You don't know you have it, but you've been struggling with it for a year. Mental health problems, it's a lot harder because people are embarrassed. They don't want to be thought of as being insane, crazy, and a nut screw, a lunatic, Vince Lee on the Greyhound bus. And people get their views about people with mental illness, what the public sometimes calls the weird mental illnesses. They get their perceptions from Hollywood movies,
for sure,
sitcoms, newspaper articles on high-profile cases, in which they never interview a person who's doing very well with a mental illness. And then, believe it or not, this coming Saturday, watch a couple of hours of cartoons, and you'll see the language in there. I'm not against cartoons. My favorite was Mighty Mouse. But even myself, I was at Eden Mental Health Center in southern Manitoba for nearly 3 weeks in 2019, and it's you're not only trying to navigate your mind and making sense of reality, you're also aware that the environment, it's like you're viewed as a diagnosis rather than a person.
Right.
And
you're navigating that mental health care system or lack thereof it, right, Chris?
Yeah. So, whether this is a mental illness situation or what, he may have a mental illness, and that's not where his thought was or why he did what he did. But this is where we have to have conversations with people that are struggling and troubled, and It's more than just saying, I hope things will get better, especially people closer to individuals. Have non-confrontational conversations to see where people are in their stress, their mental health, and whether something's really troubling them, and find ways of talking about it. You don't want to shut down the conversation.
For sure.
And then if you think there is real, true concern, the person has it planned out, et cetera, then you go to the police, or if there's enough time, you go to a magistrate and you ask for an involuntary assessment under the Mental Health Act.
Right. Chris, really appreciate your time today on this. Thank you so much. Important conversation to have, and I'm glad we could get you on to talk about it, because, as you said, there's a great deal of stigma, and the more we can talk about it, the more we can better understand it. So thank you so much, Chris.
Okay, you're welcome, sir. Bye.
Appreciate it. That's Chris Somerville, Chief Executive with the Schizophrenia Society of Canada. Your news is coming up in just a moment. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Here comes the 67. He scores! How's that for your first of the season? Another highlight reel goal. Perfect placement there on the one-time. What a play!
67's action on Rogers TV.
When an impaired driver killed my brother DJ, some people used the A word. They called it an accident, but it wasn't. An accident implies that no one was at fault. But when someone impaired by alcohol and/or drugs chooses to drive, they're fully responsible for the crash that can result. So please, for the memory of my brother DJ and the thousands of families whose lives have been shattered by impaired drivers, let's drop the A word.
A crash caused by impaired driving is not an accident.
Hey folks, it's me, Giovanni Patini, the host of the RTV quiz show, the hottest show on television. It's the hilarious quiz show where you, the viewers, play for valuable non-existent prizes. It's got great trivia, fun facts, and a lot of laughs, all blended together in a perfect cocktail of edutainment. So join us Wednesdays at 7:30 right here on Rogers TV. Nice.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
Ottawa, light rain, 1 degree. In Smith Falls, it is 3. And here's what's making news this hour. About 1,044 Hydro Ottawa customers still without power in the city's southeast end. Hydro Ottawa says a traffic accident in the Gloucester Southgate area caused the power outage. Now, crews are now making all the necessary repairs in order to restore power to affected customers. They say there should be power by 4 p.m. And the International Criminal Court says it has issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin for war crimes because of his alleged involvement in the abductions of children from Ukraine. A statement from the court says Putin, quote, is allegedly responsible for the war crime of unlawful deportation of population and that of unlawful transfer of population from occupied areas of Ukraine to the Russian Federation, end quote. The court also issued a warrant for the arrest of the Commissioner for Children's Rights in the office of the President of the Russian Federation on similar charges. City News time is 11:33. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here filling in for Sam. Sam will be back on Monday. We turn our attention to another topic. This one being that the RCMP saying that policing the Freedom Convoy, they have come away with some lessons learned. That is from newly released documents, including the need to better prepare for the potential targeting of emergency phone lines. The briefing also noted, which was, by the way, obtained by the Canadian Press under the Access to Information laws, also point to security pressures to protect leaders in Ottawa and detail the challenges that arose from the fact the protests had no clear leadership. Here to tell us and talk more about that, and also about the fact that there's a new RCMP interim leader in Michael Duheme. We are joined by Michael Kempa, Associate Professor of Criminology at the University of Ottawa. Welcome back, Michael.
Thanks. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure having you back. You know, I imagine you've had a chance to go through and look at some of the highlights of these released documents. What stands out to you?
Well, when you look at it, it's very clear that the RCMP has gone through their experience here and said we're at the threshold of a new paradigm of protest, where unlike in the past, where you might mobilize several thousand people for a focused purpose for a finite period of time, we're now dealing with the ability of diverse groups of people to organize on social media, raise huge amounts of money, and show up for multiple causes at the same time without clear leadership. This is a very different set of policing challenges, and we simply can't rely on our past experience.
The documents that were released because of the access to information. Mm-hmm. How important is that, Michael? You know, we get these, the access to information quite often, media reaching out. How important is it for us to continue to do that and make sure that the public has an understanding of what's going on?
Well, it's extremely important because at every stage of this thing, we've seen different layers of evidence. We had a huge amount of evidence at the Public Order Emergencies Commission, for example. But what the media has now pulled out through access to information requests is subsequent material came after the testimony of the RCMP at that commission that in fact clarifies a lot of what was said and some ambiguities that were left hanging at that commission. For example, the biggest one here is Brenda Lucky, the commissioner who's having her last official day today at the head of the RCMP, gave everybody the impression that the RCMP felt that the Emergencies Act was helpful for executing their plan, but not necessary. And there was some confusion around all of that. Right. These documents are much clearer. They show that the RCMP felt that to execute that plan safely and in a timely fashion, the Emergencies Act was simply necessary. So we just wouldn't get that if we didn't have media following up with access to information requests. Very important, and we are hopeful that the government will loosen up this process a little bit. This is one thing the United States does much better than us in Canada.
Yeah, and Michael, part of this that came out of this as well was the RCMP acknowledging that setting the tone early with protesters was important. But how careful does a police force have to be in the way that they set the tone with this type of situation?
One of the things that police organizations don't like is legal ambiguity. Mm-hmm. So where you've got, obviously, a charter right to peaceful assembly, it's not entirely clear all the time where the line is drawn between, in other words, fully legal versus illegal protest. So some protest that's annoying is still legal. At a certain point, if it's interfering with other citizens' abilities to exercise their rights, it becomes illegal. But the police never want to get that wrong. If they act too soon, they can find themselves at the losing end of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of civil lawsuits. So setting the tone, the RCMP is arguing in these documents, would be helped by having more clear legislation as to what legal versus illegal protest constitutes and what the precise powers and responsibilities of the police are for getting in there to set the tone, as they say. So one of the things we saw at the Freedom Convoy was the police hanging back a little bit simply because they were confused about what their rights and responsibilities were, right, and not wanting to do the wrong thing.
And I guess confusion, too, because of that lack of leadership, right? Who to go to in this kind of situation. Now, we know there were, quote unquote leaders, but it didn't seem like, they were necessarily speaking to each other on the same page, and perhaps even there for different reasons. And that would complicate things as well, right, Michael?
Well, it would. I'm at the point now where I'm almost not even using the term leadership of the convoy protests.
Right.
There were organizers.
Yes.
And there were people, some who raised money, some who did the social media presence, some who did media or public communications. But they didn't really speak for more than chunks of people who were on the ground. And on the ground, there were some groups of people, for example, the Fafaras from Quebec, who have a lineage going back to Laprade, which is an anti-Muslim group in Quebec, who had nothing to do with the overall organizational structure of the original convoy, but who attached to it. And there were many Lemets on the ground in Ottawa and elsewhere at the blockades across Canada. So if you don't have really a leadership who can control those elements, very difficult to police through things like negotiation.
And let's not forget, when it comes to leadership, I guess we can point, and you touched on it, but the lack of leadership from Lucky at the time is something that, Brenda Lucky, that's concerning as well, right?
Well, we can definitely say that through her testimony at the POEC, she didn't demonstrate a strong understanding of the role of the RCMP with respect to the other policing agencies, the role of the RCMP in working with government, and where appropriate political direction and interference is drawn. Of course, the thing that came out of the testimony was Ms. Lucky had not shared with the government that she felt that the RCMP had a plan in place and that all tools had not been exhausted prior to the invocation of the Emergencies Act. So that was poor. It was a very difficult set of circumstances, and I'm sure there were lots of meetings where very important things were being discussed, and sometimes we don't always act on our opportunities to speak. But it definitely did not help the government in coming up with its program or the timing of its program. Now, overall, fortunately, things were cleared at most jurisdictions with no loss of human life, which is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I understand only a few minor injuries. Of course, we don't want any, but when we think about the scale of what happened, the outcome was almost wildly successful, even if largely by fortune, in addition to the good work of the police on the ground and other actors.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Well said there. What about communication between different departments, Michael? Is there a hope that, looking back and seeing what a disaster it was, and the confusion that was there, do you think there'll be better communication between departments moving forward, especially because Ottawa's it's very complicated in that you have these different districts here, right?
Well, Ottawa, as a capital city, like many of the G7 capitals, does have these kind of complicated overlapping jurisdictions where it's obviously a federal capital with federal parliamentary buildings and districts. It's within the province of Ontario, and it is a city, so it does get confusing. I think, though, that everybody has seen the catastrophic outcome that comes when people do not properly coordinate, so they'll be out in front of that next time. There's going to be clearer protocols for who's to get involved at what thresholds. So just for example, if the City of Ottawa and Ottawa Police are asking for over 1,000 support officers from the Ontario Provincial Police, moving forward it would just be assumed that there would be joint command on the deployment of all of those police officers together with Ottawa Police. Similarly, there would just be assumed joint command with the Parliamentary Protective Service, who, if there's a protest in their precinct, would be wanting to coordinate with city police and provincial police in dealing with the issue.
Should Canadians, Michael, be happy with, the outcome of looking into the use of the Emergencies Act, do you think?
Well, The volume of information that was made public is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I think we all have a better understanding of what exactly happened here. Yes, there were laws on the books that should and could have been used to resolve many of the illegal dimensions of the protest that ultimately spiraled out of control from what began as a legal protest. And some understanding of what these different thresholds are around using the Emergencies Act, that it is very difficult to use, that whatever powers are put into the Emergencies Act folder at a particular instance to deal with the problem need to be measured. So we got a lot of answers there, and people now must make up their own minds. They're either satisfied with what the government did, or they feel significant mistakes were made, in which case they should voice their displeasure at the ballot box next time around.
Michael, I always enjoy our talks. Thanks so much for joining us again today. I really appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you kindly.
Thank you. That is Michael Kempa, Associate Professor of Criminology at the University of Ottawa. Always gives such excellent insight into issues like this. Coming up after the break, going to have a little bit of fun, right? Because it is Friday. We should be having a little bit of fun on a Friday. We're going to do some movie reviews. I think we're going to look at a television series as well, and would love to get his thoughts on this year's Oscar Awards as well. Keith Whittier, movie reviewer, joining us after the break. This is Derek Fage, filling in for Sam Laprade. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll learn more about the important role of a certified child specialist and how they help support pediatric care. And also, Friday is World Sleep Day. There's so many of us out there that don't get enough sleep, don't get a good night's rest. So we'll give you some advice on, how to prepare for a good night's rest. I can pretty much sleep standing up, so I think I'll be okay, but I encourage you to tune in. All that and more on Friday's Daytime Ottawa.
The regulars, the guys who keep this place in business. Last week, they had something to celebrate. Jason had just finished university. So they toasted his profs, his TAs, his old roommates. Well, they toasted just about everyone. But I worry about and take care of my guys. So even when I know they're not driving, sometimes that means bringing them a little surprise. And then they had a drink to me.
Brought to you by Smart Serve Ontario and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
I'm Julian Armour from Music and Beyond. Join us for a new show this spring on Rogers called Music and Beyond Presents.
Salut tout le monde, je m'appelle Jessie Lindsay. Venez écouter mon spectacle Encore Ottawa 3 sur Rogers TV cette semaine. Hi everybody, come listen to my Encore Ottawa 3 show on Rogers TV this week. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Derek Fage here filling in for Sam. Just getting some breaking news here. CBC reporting International Criminal Court issues arrest warrant for Putin over war crimes in Ukraine. That's just coming in now, like literally this minute. We'll obviously keep you updated. So stay tuned for our news coming up. We'll go more in depth on that story. As I say, though, it is Friday, so it's time to have some fun, and we are joined by Keith Whittier, movie reviewer. Keith, how are you today?
Doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing great as well. Before we get to some of the movies here, let's first of all talk about your thoughts on this year's Oscar Awards. What did you think?
Well, I got to tell you, I enjoyed it. I thought that there were a lot of the awards I was really happy about. Brendan Fraser, of course, winning for what I call the best performance of 2022 for The Whale. Thrilled for Ke-Huy Quan. I think it's so wonderful. I think he's been the darling of that award season. Jamie Lee Curtis, Michelle Yeoh, great careers, and now they have Oscars on their mantle, so that was great. And Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is such an interesting film in the sense of I find people either fall in one of two categories. Either they saw it and they really liked it, or they gave up on it after 10 minutes. So I think
I enjoyed it. I loved it. It was so quirky and unique.
Yeah,
you know,
and to your point, that's what I really appreciated about it. I want to see a movie that's not like all of the other films. I want to see something that's different and unique, and it definitely delivered with that. So overall, I thought it was a decent show.
And you know what? Also, Keith, pleasantly surprised that it won so many awards, because oftentimes I find movies like that are just there for purely entertainment. I find sometimes the Oscars takes itself too seriously, and they don't award movies that are just fun and entertaining films.
No, absolutely. I very much agree with that. And the fact that it won so many awards in the categories it won, and A24, which is a studio which I think a lot of people might have been sleeping on, dominated all the major awards because The Whale falls under the A24 category as well. So it was a great night for film.
All right, let's look into some films here. Let's start off with Shazam.
A lot has changed in the last few years. The wizard gave me superpowers. And then everybody got superpowers. Started from the bottom, now we're here. All right, here's the situation. Started from the bottom, now the whole team here. The daughters of Atlas are coming to hunt us.
Children stole the power of the gods. You ripped it from our father's core.
Okay, I feel like maybe I should be writing all this down.
What do you think of this film, Keith?
Yeah, so Shazam, of course, Fury of the Gods is.
Yes, I should have mentioned that because there are two separate Shazam films.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We're a team. So Shazam, Fury of the Gods, which of course is a sequel to the original, which came out a few years ago, which was very successful and also a very entertaining film. So this is an interesting one. This is part of the whole DC comic book universe, which of course also includes the likes of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, that group of characters. And one of the things that I find really endearing about this is the fact that our superheroes are basically at a foster home, and they're all kids. But when they Shazam / turn into superheroes, they become adults. But they hold on to their childlike, quirks and idiosyncrasies and dialogue. So you have these superheroes that are running around as adults saying things like, "Oh my God, this is totally cool, man!" So it kind of makes it entertaining. Now the first 2/3 of this movie are fun. We've got some new baddies in Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu to kind of shake up things, and of course it's your typical we need to save the world. Right. So for the first 2/3 of this movie, I'm in. The third movie goes a little off the rails and gets a little silly, kind of reels itself in, reins itself in towards the end. But overall, I think it's an okay film. If you have no introduction to this whole Shazam world, the first one is by far better. This one is okay. I'm not going to say it's a terrible movie, but it's definitely not one that I'm racing out to see again.
All right, let's go on to the next movie. It is called I Like Movies.
Movies are my entire life. I need to watch movies like I need to breathe air. You guys finding everything okay today?
Do you work here?
No. I just wanted to give you a hard copy of my resume. I'm very good at beginning with the end in mind, which for me is going to NYU Tisch School for the Arts.
I just don't understand why you won't apply to Canadian universities.
Because I don't want to be like a Canadian filmmaker.
What about Adam McGuane or David Cronenberg?
Oh my God.
I think I'm going to love. You know what? I did not know about this film until you brought it to our attention, and it looks like a film I would love. What do you make of this movie?
Yeah, this is one of 2 Canadian films I'm bringing to you this week, and both of them I'm thrilled to say are playing in theaters. So I Like Movies is by Canadian filmmaker Chandler Levac, and it basically centers around this teenager named Lawrence Queller. And I think of him as pretty much Larry David stuck in the body of like a 17-year-old.
Okay.
Extreme curmudgeon, very cynical on things, completely oblivious to other people's feelings. But at the same token, this is an interesting character study because I think a lot of people will find this character very relatable. Perhaps not particular to themselves, but to people they know. And he's extremely passionate about film, but at the point of alienating all those around him, and he just wants to be successful. So again, a Canadian film with a backdrop of a blockbuster type video store where he works. I thought this was a very sweet film. It's playing at the Bytown this weekend.
Oh, good. Okay.
It's always exciting when Canadian films get distribution, get cinematic distribution, I should say, because a lot of times it's relegated to like a Netflix or a Prime or a Crave or what have you. The fact that you get to see this on the big screen is I think a win. I saw it at TIFF. I'm probably going to go and see it again. It was named one of Canada's top 10 films and definitely worth that title.
Yeah,
top 10 films of last year, I should say.
Right,
of last year, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited because, I was just saying to somebody the other day how much I miss going to the movie, this movie rental store like Blockbuster and Rogers, and then some of those old independent one. We used to go to video night here in Ottawa, my family and I really miss those little trips. So this is going to be a great one for those that remember doing that to get your films. Let's go to the next one. It is called Brother.
I don't want you running the street with no hooligans. You hear me, Francis? Take your brother with you.
Don't make anybody disrespect you.
Michael, you still can't accept it. It's been 10 years.
Tell me about this film. Is this another Canadian film?
Yeah, another Canadian film, and as luck would have it, another film that was named one of the top 10 films of 2022 under Canadian films by TIFF. This is a beautiful film. So it's from director Clement Virgo, and who basically is kind of like a prodigy of TIFF. He started off doing shorts there. This is his first feature. It's with a backdrop of Scarborough. It centers around these two young black brothers who are basically being raised by their single mom, and she's trying to keep them on the straight and narrow and trying to make sure that when she's off at work at night, they're not getting into any trouble. And it's basically about their relationship, how they're inseparable, and they're basically trying to avoid all of the negative distractions in the neighborhood and just focus on their dreams. Very sweet coming of age story. Very beautiful film. It's one of those movies you take a look at, and even though it's set in Canada, it's a film that you'd think to yourself, okay, is this directed by like a major director, because it's just so profound. There's nothing about this that says, oh, this is like a nice cute little Canadian film. It's a very powerful film. This one also with theatrical distribution playing at Cineplex and Landmark, I'm excited to say.
Excellent.
Very, very powerful film. Leaving the theater, there were a lot of people like wiping away the tears just because it's just so dramatic. I really enjoyed it. And I think these two films are just a testament to a lot of the strong filmmaking foundation that we have here in Canada.
Yeah, and it's nice to see, that we get to recognize them, right? They often don't get recognized, so appreciate you bringing it to our listeners here today. Let's go to this last one, You Season 4.
Why are you here? Did you kill someone?
Oh, did someone break your heart?
Did you break my heart, Marianne? Heartbreak is always a catalyst for a new path.
You're a murderer, Joe.
You're wrong about me.
This sounds dark. This is what would you call it? A psychological thriller?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
This is on Netflix. This is the 4th season, as you mentioned. And so You is such an interesting show. It's essentially about a guy who's a bit of a stalker in Penn Badgley, who plays a guy named Joe. And so Joe's a bit of a stalker, and in each season there's a woman that he comes across that he's very taken with, and then, people end up dying. What makes this show interesting is the fact that we get the show from his point of view. So there's all of this narration that goes along with it, which sometimes makes it a bit of a dark comedy. I'm not saying go out and kill anybody. Don't do that. So it is an entertaining show, though. And coming into its 4th season, how do they keep reinventing itself? Well, they've taken the character to England now, and he's under the guise of being a professor, and of course, a bit of his past is starting to catch up with him. So I would recommend, for people who haven't seen the show, go back to season 1 and try it out. I did think that it's well done. But as far as the 4th season is concerned, compliment to the writers how they keep finding different situations for our can I call them protagonists to get out of. It is enjoyable. I think there's so many different things to watch, obviously, on these streaming services, and I think You is pretty good. 4 seasons in, it still has a captive audience, and checking out the show, you'll understand why.
Excellent. Always a pleasure, Keith. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too. All the best.
All right, take care. That's Keith Whittier, movie reviewer. Some great films: Shazam, I Like Movies, and Brother. Those two, I Like Movies and Brother, Canadian films. Really critically acclaimed films, so suggest you check them out if you can. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
On the next episode of Simply Cooking by Chef, I make my gluten-free focaccia and my Nona's tomato salad.
When an impaired driver killed my brother DJ, my life changed forever. During the pandemic, all of our lives changed, and many of us turned to alcohol and drugs to cope. As life returns to normal, the increase in substance use from COVID has lingered, and some police services report an increase in impaired driving that caused heartbreak and devastation. Now, more than ever, we need your commitment to never drive impaired, and to encourage all of your family and friends to do the same. Together, we can save lives.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
Your City News forecast for today could be a windfall of cash. With our weather guarantee, if we're off by 3 degrees, you could win. Enter at ottawa.citynews.ca. And if you hear your name on Wake Up with Rob Snow at 7:21 a.m., call in to claim your cash.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 101.1 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 17th. Good afternoon. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, light rain, 1 degree. In Smiths Falls, it is 3. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Power has been restored to most of the Gloucester Southgate area. Over 1,000 Hydro Ottawa customers were left without power earlier today after a traffic accident in the area. Crews still remain on scene and they're working to restore power to the 74 customers who haven't had their power restored. With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
Still unsettled and slick conditions out there because we've had a bit of freezing precipitation mix in with rain and flurries for Ottawa and Smiths Falls, and we'll continue with that trend as well through the day. There are no alerts with regards to that threat of icy precipitation, but the risk is there for some mixing and mainly rain for Smiths Falls, but mainly some mixing for Ottawa region. So you'll encounter a bit of everything on your drive as you move through the day, and then tonight we're going to see some rain for Ottawa. Temperatures are actually climbing as we move into evening hours here. Our guaranteed high for today, 3 degrees.
City News time is 12:03. The International Criminal Court in The Hague has issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin for war crimes. He's accused of being involved in abduction of children from Ukraine. In a statement, the court says Putin is allegedly responsible for the war crimes of unlawful deportation of children and that of unlawful transfer of children from occupied areas of Ukraine to the Russian Federation. And the CEO of OpenAI, the company behind the artificial intelligence chat box ChatGPT, says even he has no idea the full power of what they have created. This week saw OpenAI unveil their latest technology, GPT-4, which is able to pass the bar exam, answer SAT questions, and suggest recipes based on a photo of what is in your refrigerator. Sam Altman says education will have to catch up to the new technology.
When we got the calculator, the way we taught math and what we tested students on, that totally changed. The promise of this technology, one of the ones that I'm most excited about, is the ability to provide individual learning, great individual learning for each student.
Altman says while AI will eliminate a lot of current jobs, the goal is to replace them with much better employment for people. I am Damilola Unime. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam Laprade Show on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here filling in for Sam. Sam will be back Monday. Who is hungry to talk about the hot issues of the day? Well, I certainly am, and I am sure my next two guests are. It is Lunch with Sam, as you know, each and every day at about this time. But it's Lunch with Derek today, and we're joined by Cam Holmstrom, principal at Nipa Way Strategies. Good afternoon, Cam.
Hello there, Derek.
Great to have you here. And Walter Robinson, former City of Ottawa executive and political commentator. Good afternoon, Walter. How have you been?
I'm good, Derek. Been running your fan club here in Old Ottawa East, and hello to Cam.
Fantastic. I appreciate that. Oh, yeah, I'm sure the letters and emails are just coming in by the dozens.
The membership is a little low, but we'll work on it.
Okay. Really appreciate your time today, guys. I'll start with something a little bit lighter and before we get to some more serious subjects. And I say that because today is World Sleep Day. These are the things you find out when you do television and radio. You find out that there are days like this, and it is World Sleep Day. I wonder, Cam, do you get enough sleep? Like, do you have a bedtime routine yourself?
I tend to have a bedtime routine, but I'll have to admit there must be a cruel joke. The World Sleep Day somehow comes 1 week after daylight savings time kicked in, when all of our sleep is thrown to heck, right?
And on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, well, exactly, right? Like, who thought this was a good idea? Anyway, I know for me, like, I suffer from sleep apnea.
Okay.
So sleep is always something that, it's important to my health. At the same time, yeah, it can be finicky. Like, I know I sleep better in the winter and the summer because in the summer, frankly, it gets very humid, and my sleep apnea machine just does not work as well in the humidity. So, but I definitely value when I get a good night's sleep. Like, it just feels amazing.
Do you feel you get enough?
I feel I get enough, more or less.
Okay, that's good news. How about yourself, Walter?
Well, I'm glad you didn't do the show this morning at 8 o'clock because I would have been sleeping. National Sleep Day.
I had a rough wake-up, I'm not going to lie. It was my friend's 60th birthday last night, Walter, and I had to drag myself into the studio today.
So I'm fortunate. All my life I've been able to get a lot of sleep, and I'm a 7 to 8 hour a night person. And even as a kid, my mom, when she was alive, told me stories about I would sleep through fire alarms in our housing project building, and I can go to sleep with the lights on. I've been very fortunate that way. But if I don't get my 7 or 8 hours, like 5, 6, I get a headache. And I can be cranky at the best of times, but I get really cranky if I don't get enough sleep.
You and I are very similar. I am the same. I can sleep through I fell asleep during a rock concert once beside my brother, and he was just like, what is happening? How are you actually sleeping here? But much the same. I need need I actually need like an 8 or 9 hour, and if I don't get it, which I didn't get often when I was hosting breakfast television in Montreal, because that was a 3 a.m. wake-up call, and it was so hard to get a full night's sleep.
Derek?
Yeah.
Two asides real quick in terms of falling asleep at concerts. It's a genetic thing. I got it from my father, and I've given it to my son. And as a kid, one time he fell asleep during Blue Rodeo at Canada Day on Parliament Hill. And another time we went to see the Blue Man Group off Broadway in a theater that maybe had 100 seats. And the Blue Man Group guys are climbing over them and throwing the toilet paper. And my son's 4 years of age, fast asleep. It's a genetic thing in the Robinson family.
Oh, that's hilarious. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. All right, let's move on to the next topic. I'll start with you, Cam. Federal budget in less than 2 weeks. What should we expect, and what do you want to see?
Well, first thing I'm going to be looking for is what's going to be there to speak to the supply and confidence agreement with the NDP, because that's where this all comes down to, right? This is actually one of the votes where this really matters. And from everything we're hearing so far, there's going to be a fair significant amount there. So that, I think, is going to be interesting. But beyond that, it's going to be the tone of what this budget's going to be. Is it going to be an actual governing budget where they're putting the language out there and they're putting what's in there to actually govern for the next year? Or is this going to look more like a campaign budget where they're putting stuff in the window that will be very attractive to voters, but also stuff in the window that'll be poison pills for others that they can't swallow, trying to push us to an election? I think that'll say a lot about where we're going. Mind you, with the events of the last couple of weeks, I don't know why the heck this government wouldn't want to go anywhere near an election right now.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think it would be very dangerous for them to consider an election. How about you, Walter? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll save the election chatter to when we get to former Governor General David Johnston. Okay. I disagree with Cam on that, but I do agree with his analysis of the budget. The supply and confidence agreement is an important thing. You'll see more money, I believe, from DPM and Finance Minister Freeland around the dental care package, which is insufficient right now, just from a sheer numbers point of view, whether you believe in it or not.
Right.
And on pharmacare, I think you'll see some more wheelie, measles, mouth line. Pharmacare doesn't work. And it's the solution in search of a problem that can be fixed by filling the gaps of underinsured and people who are not taking full advantage of their private or public sector entitlements. But be that as it may, the other thing that'll be interesting in the budget is this issue of affordability that both Jagmeet Singh from the NDP on the political left and Pierre Poilievre on the right are really hammering the government on in terms of affordability for a variety of things. And Minister Freeland has to walk this fine line around providing supports where the government can, but not jacking up inflation, because fiscal policy will drive inflation. And as we're also seeing in this new kind of inflationary environment, monetary policy is very limited in what it can do in jamming down inflation. So she has a really tight rope to walk, and I believe this is a campaign budget, and I believe we will be in an election before the end of this year. We can come back to that.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's talk about affordability, Cam, because as Walter said, he's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has really been battered around on this particular issue by both the NDP and certainly by Pierre Poilievre. It just seems, Cam, to me that he's completely ignored it. I don't understand why. I know they've made these vocal gestures about it and how they're doing their best to help Canadians, but I don't think many Canadians are feeling that way, Cam.
Well, no, they're not. And to be honest, this has been kind of the MO of this government for the longest time. It's to make all the right noises, the old "I feel your pain," but doing very little actually about the pain itself. Now, is the Prime Minister and his government causing a lot of this pain? No, this inflation issue, it goes well beyond our borders and well beyond our control.
Agreed.
As Walter correctly pointed out, fiscal policy can only do a limited amount about it. But there are measures that this government can take on to actually deal with some of these issues if they so chose. And so far, their default step is to do nothing. And that does nothing to help the rest of us. I don't know about how you guys feel, but my wife and I did a quick grocery shop this week. We picked up a few items for today, and honestly, we probably spent over $100.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's why when you see Mr. Singh and Mr. Poilievre pointing these things out, every little thing in isolation looks bad and feels worse, and reminds you that, hey, something's not right here. We need government to step in and to actually help to work on this. And this whole idea of saying, no, it's not that bad. Well, you know what? I don't feel it. I definitely don't feel it. And that's not going to sit well with people if that's what your default response is always going to be.
Walter, you mentioned you think an election will come before his term this term is up. Why do you feel that way?
Because I believe the Chinese foreign interference, let's be very clear, foreign interference issue is not going away. It's only going to get worse and worse. It is a drip, drip, drip on this government. I believe what comes in the budget will be enough on dental care. There will be some words and language around pharmacare. But if Jagmeet Singh and the NDP are really sincere around the supply and confidence agreement, at some point in time, they're going to pull the plug on this government, or the government is going to pull the plug on itself. And I believe this budget, I'm making the bold prediction, happy to be wrong because I've predicted a lot of lottery numbers over my life. I'm not calling you from my Grand Cayman vacation property. I think they're going to go table this, the President Biden here next week, you table after on the 28th. You have a 2-week break, you come back, you use a week or two to pass the budget. I think he prorogues Parliament. And then David Johnson, I'm not even sure where the rapporteur's investigation goes or not. If this continues as it is and so-called leaks are coming out of CSIS or other parts of our intelligence establishment, I think there's going to be a time because right now the NDP is at great, great risk of really being around the kind of the blue-collar unions, not the white-collar unions that Doug Ford in Ontario took. Pierre Poilievre is working hard to take. And if it looks like the Poilievre government could be a reality, you'll get the strategic voting on the left. And Jagmeet Singh could be in serious, serious trouble. And the NDP has no money. I think they're on, I'm hearing the third or fourth mortgage on the building or something like that. They have problems.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Third or fourth mortgage? Seriously? Like, come on, man.
That's the chatter. The NDP is they had a good fundraising quarter at the end of 2022, but there are issues around financing a campaign.
Then the chatter is fully off the mark on that one because they're raising more money now than they did in the run of the last election when they were nearly broke and they went into that campaign debt free with money in the bank. So you know what? Money's not the issue. Let's just be realistic here. No party is ready for an election because no one has. Only the Liberals having a handful of candidates nominated. Nobody is ready to go. But I will say this:
you don't think Poilievre would like an election right now, Cam?
He may like it, but he's not ready for it.
Okay.
Like, there are actual logistical things you have to do. You just can't just throw it out there and say, "Okay, guys, let's go," with nothing planned. Like that just doesn't work. And here's the thing. I've been firmly of the belief that this is not coming for 2024. But I will say this. The events of the news of the last month has definitely increased the odds that, yes, it may eventually come this year because political gravity was bearing itself on this conversation. You cannot keep allowing this issue to be out there without any about foreign interference, not dealing with it. And not have it affect these things. Like, this is one of those issues that has the ability to completely overturn the apple cart. Remember what happened with Gomery, right? Just remember that.
Yeah.
Bingo, Cam. That's bingo.
the example of where things hit a tipping point, and then all of a sudden it becomes too hard for people to back this government. We're not there yet, but wow, we're getting.
You don't think he can wait it out, Cam? You don't think that he can wait until that it might go away by that time, or this
is not going away because it's not brand new. This has been going on for years.
Right.
There have been stories about this for years now. Now it's taking off, but this has been out there for a long time, and it's not going away because it's working. It's working for them right now. For China, for Russia, and others, it's working. Why would they stop?
Yeah, go ahead, Walter.
One little point on this,
Sure.
and I don't know why the media is not more on this. People are saying it didn't overturn the election. Maybe not. Whether it's one election, one riding, one community, one poll, one vote, it's one too many. And there is a credible argument today that Kenny Chu, the Conservative MP, is not sitting in Parliament, former Conservative MP, because of foreign election interference.
Yeah.
This has to come to a head.
Yeah, no, excellent points, gentlemen. I'm going to take a quick break. We got some other topics to get to. We'll be right back here with Lunch with Derek on the Sam Laprade Show today. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. We're on the line for $20.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
It's about sharing and caring. It's about doing and belonging. It's about living life to its fullest. And it's about laughing out loud. We are L'Arche Canada, and we're about witnessing and sharing the gifts of all people. Learn more about us today.
Our ancestors came here from France to build a better life. We lived here happily for generations. Until the British decided they wanted our land. The men were called to a meeting and then imprisoned. They demanded we swear an oath to their king and took everything, regardless. We were forced from Acadie, the only home we knew. Mon Acadie n'existera plus.
From 1755 to 1763, over 10,000 Acadians were ripped from their homeland. Despite this, Acadian culture endures in Atlantic Canada.
Hello, my name is Sean Duhame. And this is the Sean Duhame Trio. I hope you enjoy it.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. It is Lunch with Derek. I'm just going to dive into our next question, joined by Cam Holmstrom and Walter Robinson. I believe the name's already been brought up. David Johnston will take up the post as Ottawa's special rapporteur to investigate allegations of foreign interference in Canadian elections and society. What do you make of the choice, Walter?
I don't know why David Johnston took the position. I posted earlier today, people are criticizing the choice of David Johnston is not to criticize his integrity or his history. He is a distinguished Canadian.
Right.
That being said, people are raising legitimate questions about his friendship with the Trudeau family, his former involvement with the Trudeau Foundation, despite his fact of being a chancellor of universities, a broadcaster, one of the hosts of the 1979 and 1984 political debates. What I think it does is really cook the goose for him, though. If given all this controversy, he comes back now and says, no, I've looked and I think the avenues of inquiry that the Prime Minister has kind of papered this thing over with are good, then the fix is in. If he comes back and says, I've taken a look and yes, I agree that a public inquiry under the Inquirers Act is fulsome and necessary. And remember, an inquiry like that survives an election. Inquiries like that in royal commissions carry on after, even if an election is called. Then Justin Trudeau takes criticism for, why did you rag the puck? Why did you wait so late? Why weren't you a leader to make this call? So either way, I think the goose is cooked. And I'll come back to the other one. Does he have a report? I do not know. I looked. I don't know if there's any. I did a quick look. A rapporteur, I don't think is any definition within the Inquirers Act per se, but I could be wrong. Does his report ever see the light of day if we move towards a spring or fall election? And what is the timeline for this? So there's still so many questions out there. I don't know if you could have found somebody unimpeachable in the country on this, given his history on boards and risings in politics. I just don't know why he said yes. I don't think there's many people standing up saying, pick me for this sort of role.
Right. Yeah, and interesting perspective. You're the first that have brought that up, the questioning why he would even take it. Cam, what are your thoughts?
Oh, Walter beat me to the punch on that, because that was my first thought. Well, what exactly is in it for him to take this on? And honestly, that's before I knew about his connections to the family and the Trudeau Foundation.
Well, maybe that's why you took it, right, Cam? Maybe that's why.
But that proves the point as to why he probably shouldn't have taken it, right? Yeah. And I agree with Walter. You can separate out his unimpeachable record of public service, and also say at the same time, he's not the right guy for this job, because this job is very specific, and it requires trust. It requires that separation from the Prime Minister, because essentially what this is at the end of the day is asking a government to investigate itself, which in itself is inherently wrong.
Yeah.
So you're already putting whoever it is behind the 8 ball, and then you put someone in place who, again, has these connections, which, whether they will cloud his judgment or not, I'm not saying they will. I believe in his judgment. But then the questions will linger out there, and what comes out, no matter what it is, ever be accepted? And I think that's the thing this Prime Minister hasn't seemed to have gotten. To me, this was bait. This was an attempt to try to be more of a political solution than an actual solution to the problem. And I think it's going to blow up in his face right now. Unfortunately, Mr. Johnson, for the life of me, I don't know why he would put himself out there as the bait, but he's there. So now we're going to see what's going to come of it, but I don't think any of it's going to come public, because, again, that was the whole point of sending stuff to NSICOP. It doesn't come public, right?
Yeah.
So we're stuck back in this situation. I'll say it again. The Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, they're laughing. They're happy. Right?
Yeah.
Because we're sitting here yelling at each other, pointing our fingers at each other, getting nothing done, and they just keep doing what they're doing.
And Derek,
go ahead, Walter.
And think about Cam and I come from different political backgrounds, and we're not questioning the integrity of David Johnson, but around the process. And think about this: we're now discussing David Johnson, not the issue of election and interference, right? So it is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we get down this rabbit hole. There's also an issue here, and a good friend of mine talked to me about it yesterday. It's like a legal principle in equity. You need to come to the court with clean hands, and I don't know if people have seen if they can get behind the paywall. Andrew Coyne has written 2, I think, excellent columns in the context of David Johnson. Again, it's not for us to accept his unimpeachability. It's for his character and his record and everything he's done in and of itself to demonstrate that. And again, it's people reading into that saying, I don't think there is full impartiality for what is required, which comes back to, why did you not move to a public inquiry? Because electoral sovereignty is as important, if not more important, as national sovereignty. Defending our borders and defending our electoral process, they are the same things. This is one of the top jobs of the Prime Minister, to keep the country united and to keep the country sovereign. And that's what's at stake.
Yeah, you both make excellent points. Because it's Friday, I thought we'd, have something a little bit lighter as a topic, and I bring this up for 2 reasons. Number one, because I've owned a record collection for many, many years. I've kept my vinyl collection from my teen years and my early 20s. I just bought the Doobie Brothers Greatest Hits the other day because they're coming to town, actually tickets on sale. And the other reason is that vinyl records are now immensely popular, and for the first time in more than 3 decades have surpassed the sale of CDs. So, Cam, do you collect vinyl? Have you kept your old collection? Do you even own a record player?
I don't, but that's not out of any affinity to one thing or the other. I just don't. But the thing is that it's undeniable. The sound of music on vinyl is so much different, so much more warm than it is on CD. That's always been the case. And I think this is more of, yes, it's good to see more people turning towards that medium, but I think this is more of, frankly, an indictment on the passing of CD technology. Because think about it. How many people still have a CD player in their home? Right? I don't have one. I don't have, and honestly, I took all of my CDs and I transferred them over to MP3 and onto my computer like a decade ago.
Wow.
Right? Like you think about it. How many computers these days are sold with a CD with the CD drive now? None, right?
Good point.
The ubiquity of this technology has gone away. Whereas, that there was that quality that came with vinyl that pushed people to keep it around. And as a big fan of hip-hop music myself, vinyl is such a big part of that culture, right? And of the music itself and the quality of it. Whereas CDs have never managed to bring itself around in that same way. So I think that just speaks more to the timeliness and the quality of vinyl and the actual quality of the product, and then it does about the fact that, you know what, if I listen to it on a CD or listen to it on MP3, I'm getting the same sound. So why do I have the CD?
Yeah, I happen to have probably over 150 CDs still. But Walter, very quickly, I'm just running out of time here.
Yeah,
How about yourself?
I'm looking at the clock. First, Cam and I are going to do some scratching after this, going back on the old hip-hop records.
Love it.
Secondly, we had a garage sale. I tried, when we moved last year, tried to sell CDs. The only things that went was my Wings Over America triple live CD set. The rest, people are just like, I'll give you a quarter for it. But here's the thing. I still have 45s from a kid, from being a kid. Thanks for mentioning the Doobie Brothers.
Too, yeah.
50 years touring. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I still have 45s as a kid. And think about vinyl in the context of The Last of Us or EMP pulses. Your digital music won't work. You got a generator or the hamster's running on a wheel. You can still turn the record player and listen to old school music. And last tragedy, I looked this morning after I saw the show notes for today to say, here's some of the topics. I saw that I had Afternoon Light Delight by Starland Vocal Band, who beat Boston for Group of the Year in the 1976-1977 Grammys. What a travesty.
Nice. I love it, guys. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. I had so much fun today with you. Really appreciate the time.
Always a pleasure.
All right, take care. That is Cam Holmstrom, principal at Nipaway Strategies, and Walter Robinson, former City of Ottawa executive and political commentator. Had so much fun doing that. And, of course, we'll do it again next week when Sam returns. This is Derek Fage filling in on The Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Here comes the 67. He scores! How's that for your first of the season? Oh! Another highlight reel goal. Perfect placement there on the one-time. What a play!
67's action on Rogers TV.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
Everybody knows not to drink and drive, but some people still think it's okay to take drugs and drive. Police have the authority, the ability, and the tools to determine if drivers are impaired by legal or illegal drugs. And because drug-impaired drivers can pose just as great a risk as drunk drivers, they face the same penalties, like the loss of their driver's license, a criminal record, fines, and more. A message from the RCMP, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
Once upon a time, in a nursery rhyme, there were 3 bears. 1, 2, 3 bears. And they went a-walking in the cool woods a-talking while their porridge began.
Rogers TV invites you to let your imagination roam as we present Ottawa Storytellers. Each week we'll present a collection of original creative stories and inspirations for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers on Rogers TV.
On the next Fit Over 50, come and join me for an upper body and core strength workout using weights and resistance bands. We'll see you then.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 17th. Good afternoon. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, light rain, 1 degree. In Smiths Falls, it is 3. And here's what's making news this hour. Power has been restored to a majority of the over 1,000 customers in Gloucester Southgate who lost power earlier today. There are 74 customers still without power in the area. Hydro Ottawa says a traffic accident caused the outage in the 9 o'clock hour this morning. Crews have been dispatched and power is expected to be restored before 9 p.m. The Canadian government has dropped the mandatory COVID-19 test requirements for anyone traveling here from China, Hong Kong. This means there are no longer any federal COVID-19 border measures in place. The Public Health Agency of Canada says that since Canada and other countries put temporary border measures in place in January of this year, data from China, the international community, and wastewater sampling have not detected any new variants of concern. The former Minneapolis police officer serving time for the murder of George Floyd has pleaded guilty to 2 counts of tax evasion. Derek Chauvin entered the plea today in a Minnesota court. Chauvin appeared via video link from a federal prison in Arizona, and Chauvin and his now ex-wife were charged with multiple counts of underreporting their income and failing to file tax returns. His ex-wife pleaded guilty earlier to 2 counts. Chauvin was previously convicted on state murder charges for the May 2020 killing of George Floyd and on a federal count of violating Floyd's civil rights. City News time is 12:33. I am Damilola Unime. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Business Lunch on City News, brought to you by the Ottawa Business Journal.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Sam. Sam will be back on Monday, as I mentioned. It is time for the Business Lunch, of course, brought to you by, as you just heard, the Ottawa Business Journal, a great partnership. So happy to have them on board. And we're going to talk about the business of housing affordability. We've been talking about it in Ottawa, of course, across the country, in Ontario as well. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, was in Guelph, Ontario, to launch the Housing Accelerator Fund. Here to tell us more about it, I am joined by the Honourable Ahmed Hussein, who is the Minister of Housing and Diversity and Inclusion. Good morning. Thank you. Or sorry, I should say good afternoon. How are you today?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on your show.
Very, very happy to have you, Ahmed. Let's talk about what this means. This is a $4 billion initiative. Expand upon this Housing Accelerator Fund for us.
This is an ambitious plan, a $4 billion program to enable to invest in local governments, municipal governments, and other authorities that are responsible for the permitting and delivery of housing, to enable them to build additional housing. We want to invest in the capacity of these communities to unlock more housing, particularly affordable housing, but housing of all types. And we are investing in removing the barriers, the system barriers that prevent the additional unlocking of additional supply across the country. We are very eager to make sure we double the number of new homes built in Canada in the next 10 years. And one of the ways to do that is to invest very ambitiously in the capacity of local governments to be able to approve housing faster and to deliver housing faster. And that's exactly what we're doing with the Housing Accelerator Fund.
Mr. Hussein, the fact that you mentioned you're removing barriers. What type of barriers are you talking about?
Well, for example, making sure that housing can be built faster. It takes far too long to approve housing projects. It takes too long in many communities to deliver that housing. And some of it is connected to, adopting better policies, whereas others is really connected to capacity. A lot of municipal governments lack the capacity to do more. And so we will be investing in the systems to enable them to do more. And in my conversations with various mayors across the country, they have highlighted the need to invest in their systems so that they can help Canadians access more housing for all, including affordable housing. And so this $4 billion Housing Accelerator Fund is the federal government's response to that challenge. We know that these systems changes and the removal of these barriers would require investment. And we're providing that investment as a partner. We're coming to the table, and we're providing that funding so that municipalities can embark on these reforms, can embark on these systems changes to unlock more housing for everyone.
Mr. Hussain, we really appreciate you taking some time. I know it's a busy day for you, so thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Again, that's the new $4 billion initiative, the Housing Accelerator Fund. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Salut tout le monde, je m'appelle Jessie Lindsay. Venez écouter mon spectacle Encore Ottawa 3 sur Rogers TV cette semaine. Hi everybody, come listen to my Encore Ottawa 3 show on Rogers TV this week. I hope you enjoy it.
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll learn more about the important role of a certified child specialist and how they help support pediatric care. And also, Friday is World Sleep Day. There's so many of us out there that don't get enough sleep, don't get a good night's rest. So we'll give you some advice on, how to prepare for a good night's rest. I can pretty much sleep standing up, so I think I'll be okay, but I encourage you to tune in. All that and more on Friday's Daytime Ottawa. Before she went on vacation, I'm luckily getting to listen in on it because I am heading on vacation myself soon, and that is the cybersecurity risks that are associated with travel. Here to tell us more about it, we are joined by the head of engineering at Checkpoint Canada, Robert Falzon. Robert, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Robert, I would imagine this is something that we do a very poor job of, right?
Is preparing ourselves to travel, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to cybersecurity. Yeah.
I think it's really just boils down to folks really not having an understanding of what the risk is and understanding how dangerous it can be if you're not prepared. So it's a great topic to discuss today for sure. Timing is great. I'm also going on vacation next week. So
oh, excellent.
Paying close attention to it as well.
So what should you do then to take that proactive approach? What should you do before you go on vacation?
That's a good question. There's a number of steps you can take. I think it's important to, right off the bat, and I suggest this to do this frequently, actually, update all your passwords. Make sure that if you have some passwords that maybe haven't been changed in a while, take a moment and just go through those passwords for important websites and things that you log into, whether your social media and banking and things like that. Update those passwords to make them more complex. And also add MFA, multi-factor authentication. Make sure that you're using the most current and available security tools from the websites and services that you're using. Those are two things you can do right off the bat that'll have a huge impact. I would also say update and install all current software and security updates for your device. So if it's your mobile phone, just check for updates and make sure that all the security patches are installed. If you're bringing your laptop with you, which many people are, some people actually are doing working vacations where they'll bring their laptop and spend some time on the beach, but also maybe sit in the hotel and do a little bit of work. Make sure they're up to date as well and secure. And I'd also make sure that I turn off any automatic Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connections. So don't have your phone out there searching for Wi-Fi's to connect to, because you could find one perhaps you don't want to connect to.
Right.
Those are simplest things.
Yeah, and I guess is it fairly safe to use the Wi-Fi at a resort or a hotel, or should you be skeptical about that?
Well, I like to use the analogy, if you're comfortable in doing whatever you're doing in a room full of people, so for example, if the data that you're accessing via the Wi-Fi is something that you'd be comfortable shouting out in a room full of strangers, go ahead and use it. If not, then I would suggest to you that it's probably best to try to look for other means of communicating, whether it be over a VPN or whether even the cellular connection itself is often far more secure than using a public Wi-Fi.
What about, can you Is there any way to check if you've been compromised in any way?
Well, there are software packages available. We have one called Zone Alarm that I use. There's a number of packages that you can use on your device that will check and make sure that you're not being subjected to things like man-in-the-middle attacks, where you might connect to a Wi-Fi that looks like it's the Starbucks Wi-Fi, but it's not. It's really a hacker. They'll identify things like that and help you to protect yourself. The sophistication of the attacks nowadays that consumers are facing is so high that really we can't really rely on our gut to determine whether something's safe or not. We really need to be using technology and protections on our devices to make sure, because it's just too complex and sophisticated for us to make a decision, especially if you're talking about, I'm flying with my teenage son next week, and he's far less concerned about security than I am.
Right, yeah, of course. I don't know if you touched on this, Robert. I just want to go back to, before you travel, is it should you back up your electronic files?
It's always a great idea.
Okay.
One thing that I'm concerned about, and I had a discussion the other day with a friend about this, as many people too, before they travel, will do things like take photographs of their travel documents. I'm not a big fan of that idea, because if your mobile phone is compromised, then whoever gains access to that will have all of the information necessary to basically get credit in your name. So be cautious of doing things like that as well, taking pictures of your passport or your driver's license and having them in your phone. I would be very, very concerned about that.
Okay.
Those things to me are probably the most important, because it is your critical personal information.
Robert, anything you should do when you return home?
Yeah, so when you return home, it's always a good idea to check up on your credit history as well. So a lot of apps will allow you to go and check your credit score and make sure that nothing's been taken out in your name, or there's nothing unusual on your credit card receipts or your credit card bill. Keep an eye on that for the next few months for sure. Even if it's something small and you're not sure, look into it to make sure that it's not maybe a hacker testing to see whether the credit card is valid. So if you don't recognize the charge, absolutely look into it. It's also, again, a great idea once you return to, again, maybe have a look at changing your passwords again for just the really critical sites, like maybe your financial or things like that. Certainly social media should be changed on a regular basis. I can't stress the password hygiene is one of the probably the most important things. Also, be very cautious about emails, especially while you're abroad.
Okay.
Be very careful about what you receive in your inbox and what you click. Nothing with attachments should ever be opened up without having some sort of protection on your phone or on your laptop. That's probably still today the most common way folks are infected with dangerous malware.
Excellent advice, Robert. Really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy your trip. Travel safe.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you as well. Thank you.
All right, take care. That's Robert Falzon, Head of Engineering at Checkpoint Canada, which, another thing I'll also just point out quickly, we had a guest on Daytime Ottawa talking about travel, and just in another vein, if you are traveling, just be sure that you're not telling everybody when you're going and where you're going, and, it just... people can use that information. Don't forget, they can find out where you live on, just by going through your social media, by looking at photographs and things like that. So just press upon people that, sometimes I'm guilty of that, of letting people know. But again, you're putting yourself in a compromising position when you end up telling people when your vacation begins and ends, and the best piece of advice is, post those pictures once you get back from vacation. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more. This is Derek Fage filling in for Sam Laprade, and you're listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Salut tout le monde, je m'appelle Jessie Lindsay. Venez écouter mon spectacle Encore Ottawa 3 sur Rogers TV cette semaine. Hi everybody, come listen to my Encore Ottawa 3 show on Rogers TV this week. I hope you enjoy it.
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll learn more about the important role of a certified child specialist and how they help support pediatric care. And also, Friday is World Sleep Day. There's so many of us out there that don't get enough sleep, don't get a good night's rest. So we'll give you some advice on, how to prepare for a good night's rest. I can pretty much sleep standing up, so I think I'll be okay, but I encourage you to tune in. All that and more on Friday's Daytime Ottawa.
I'm Wendell Clark with a word about winning. We all know it takes a team effort in any sport and with any challenge. You can be a part of the winning team that shuts out impaired driving. Whether you're out on the town or just hanging out with friends, drink responsibly. Always have a plan for a safe ride home for yourself, your family, and your friends. You'll be helping to shut out impaired driving.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Here we go.
Hey, going back in, okay?
It's a new season of the new Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
Sam will be back on Monday. Another warning here to listeners and viewers, especially on Rogers TV. We've been losing power on and off here in the building, and I guess probably in the entire area. So if you all of a sudden, if you're watching on TV and you see me go dark, we have our generators running, so you'll most likely still be able to listen. But I just wanted to warn people. And if you are listening on radio, in your car or something, and you do lose us, we'll be back very quickly. So it would just be a very brief moment if we lose. But yeah, there's power out in the area. So just keep that in mind. This is a story we've covered, of course, here on City News, the fact that Silicon Valley Bank failed last week. And the question is, was that a unique situation, or is it something that should make us, question our financial institutions? And I'll follow that up with the fact that Credit Suisse is now set to borrow up to, I believe it's over $50 billion from the Swiss National Bank, because investors sent shares in the country's second biggest lender crashing by as much as 30% Wednesday. Here to talk more about that, to take a deeper dive into it, I am joined by William O'Connell, PhD candidate at the Department of Political Science at the University of Toronto. Good morning, William.
Good morning, Derek. Thank you for having me.
First of all, let's just not assume that everybody understands what happened. Maybe you could just walk us through what happened with the Silicon Valley Bank failure.
Of course, yeah. So Silicon Valley was a bank much like any other. They took customer deposits, had checking accounts, savings accounts, took deposits from corporations, they made loans. But the difference with Silicon Valley is that they were primarily concentrated in the tech sector in Southern California and the Bay Area. And as a result, a very large portion of their client base were kind of small, medium-sized tech companies, startups, venture capitalists, and kind of a specific clientele that maybe has a higher risk appetite than others and has kind of a different depositor profile. Silicon Valley Bank then used those customer deposits that they were getting to invest in relatively long-term U.S. government bonds and mortgage bonds around 2015, 2016, 2017, when there was a large boom in the California tech industry.
Okay.
Now, as we know, interest rates were a lot lower 5, 6, 7 years ago than they are now. And the result is that those investments that they made went considerably down in value because, of course, if you're buying bonds today, you can get a much higher interest rate than you would in 2017 or 2018.
Of course. Yeah.
So as the tech sector in California kind of started to wind down and companies started to kind of wind down the amount of debt that they had, pull a bit of their money out, Silicon Valley had to start selling these investments at a considerable loss in order to meet withdrawal demands. And that had a cascading effect where they faced more withdrawals, had to sell more assets, realize more losses, and eventually the system collapsed onto itself.
Yeah, and I mean, it is unique circumstances for sure. Just, how you described it, those are, at the same time, when I look at it, it was the 16th largest bank in the United States, right? And from my understanding, there's over 4,500 banks in the United States. So when you're losing the 16th largest bank, I imagine there's a lot of anxiety involved in that, William, for people that have their money in any bank. So what differentiates that from, let's say, the U.S. banking system from the Canadian banking system? Are we in a better place here in Canada?
Sure, of course, yeah. So there are quite a bit of differences between the U.S. and the Canadian banking system. So Silicon Valley is the 16th largest bank in the U.S. The 16th largest bank in Canada is quite small. Our banking system is much, much more concentrated.
Right.
And that means that bank failures in Canada happen less often simply because there are fewer banks. But if one were to happen, it probably would have a much larger cascading effect just due to the concentration. So it is concerning, of course. I mean, this is a very large deal, but the fact that this was a bank in Silicon Valley that was concentrated in one geographical sector and was primarily involved in one sector of the economy allowed it to fail in a manner that still had disruptive effects on the larger economy, but maybe not as extreme as happened with some of the bank failures in, say, 2008, where you had larger banks that kind of operated over a much wider section of the economy.
Another question people are asking, William, is why is the U.S. government helping them? And I guess the follow-up to that is should they be helping them?
Of course, yeah. So it's important to distinguish what exactly constitutes a bailout. So in this instance, this was not a situation of the U.S. government essentially nationalizing all of their debt and kind of guaranteeing bondholders, guaranteeing shareholders, or using taxpayer money to bail out the people responsible for this mess. Instead, what they're doing is guaranteeing deposits over the federal deposit insurance cap, which in the U.S. is $250,000 and in Canada is $100,000. And what this means is if you're a depositor of Silicon Valley Bank, you're eligible to receive your money above that $250,000 cap if you're a depositor. So if you're a shareholder of Silicon Valley Bank, you're losing your money. If you're a bondholder of Silicon Valley Bank, you're losing a substantial portion of your money. But the depositors here, these are, medium-sized corporations that might have had payroll obligations that are more than $250,000. And so by guaranteeing those deposits, the government is able to ensure that the shareholders and the management of Silicon Valley Bank face the losses that they deserve for taking on this risk. But the depositors who had nothing to do with this don't lose money that would result in layoffs, job losses, furloughs, or serious negative effects on people who didn't have anything to do with this failure.
Right. So what should we be watching for in the coming weeks and the coming months, do you think?
So I think in the short term, really what we should be looking at is this Credit Suisse issue, which really is in some ways unrelated to the SVB failure in the sense that they didn't exactly have much exposure to SVB, but I think the general panic among investors and wariness has really taken its toll there. Credit Suisse has been kind of teetering for quite a while. They've had some issues raising funding, and it appears at least as if this emergency loan from the Swiss National Bank has calmed things in the short term, but how that will shake out in the long term remains to be seen. On a longer time frame, I think we might see some additional concentration in the U.S. banking system as individuals start to look at some of these smaller regional banks and question whether they really want to put themselves through the stress of this situation. Because if Silicon Valley were a much larger bank, then there really would be no doubt that a bailout or something of that nature would come, and they wouldn't face the same degree of uncertainty.
What happened with the Credit Suisse situation? You touched on that briefly.
Yeah, so Credit Suisse has been facing some difficulty as a result of regulatory reforms that were implemented after 2008 that kind of mandated some restructuring for some of these large global investment banks. And the result is that they have been gradually trying to unwind some positions and simplify some of their business models to kind of fit in the new post-2008 regulatory landscape. In the last 6 to 8 months or so, they have been struggling to get funding. They've tried to issue new shares and had some difficulty selling them. Their stock price has been kind of gradually declining for a few months now. And the result is that they are simply having trouble finding lenders to finance their day-to-day operations. I believe 2 days ago, they made an agreement with the Swiss National Bank, the central bank in Switzerland, for this $54 billion loan.
Right.
And that appears to have swayed markets that things are calm for now, because this appeared to be much more money than what